Council, I would like to call for roll call, please.
All council members are present.
Thank you. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So tonight we're going to start with a couple of ceremonial presentations, and the first proclamation that we have tonight is going to be to Public Works. Do we have Ray in the audience? Give me 1 second, Ray. Take them all up there. Okay, thank you. Guys been mayor before? Maybe. Do you have Public Works? Is that Public Works? Somewhere. The City of Millbrae takes great pride in protecting and maintaining its exceptional landscapes, environment, and natural resources. Whereas the City of Millbrae supports clean and safe water, land, and air in our community. Whereas the proper management of waste is key to preserving our environment and strengthening our economy. Whereas pollution prevention is a cost-effective management tool that can be substantially reduced with the generation and the impact of waste, conservative resources, and protect the environment. And whereas recognizing Pollution Prevention Week and celebrating 26 years of the Pollution Prevention Act of 1990, where Congress declared it to be a national policy of the United States that pollution should be prevented or reduced at the source whenever feasible. Where environmental sustainability provides an opportunity for our schools, businesses, citizens, and government to partner to work proactively together towards a prosperous and sustainable future. And whereas increasing the awareness and attention to pollution prevention is the best interest of Millbrae's environmental and economy. Whereas now, therefore, be it resolved, we, the members of the Millbrae City Council, do hereby proclaim September 12th through the 18th, 2016 as National Pollution Prevention Week. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Mayor, for this proclamation. Just to remind everybody that tomorrow, September 14th, city staff will be at the Millbrae Square from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to answer any question about environmental and pollution control. And this Saturday, on September 17th, we are conducting a citywide coastal cleanup day, and we are going to gathering at the Rotary Park between 9:30 until noon. We are going to conduct citywide cleaning, so hope we'll see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Next we have a proclamation proclaiming the month of September as Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, and we have somebody from Seton Medical Center, Director Barry Chasser. Is he here? Chasser? Barry? So whereas prostate cancer is the most frequently diagnosed cancer in men aside from skin cancer, and it's estimated that 1 in 7 men will develop this disease in their lifetime, and whereas the American Cancer Society estimates that there will be 180,890 new cases of prostate cancer in the United States of America in 2016, resulting in an estimated 26,120 deaths. And whereas it's estimated that 17,240 men in California will be diagnosed with prostate cancer this year, and it's estimated that 3,050 California men will die from this disease. And whereas African American men have the highest prostate cancer incidence rates in the world, and their prostate cancer death rate in the United States of America is more than twice that of any other ethnic group. And whereas early prostate cancer usually has no symptoms, and studies suggest strongly familiar predispositions may be responsible for 5 to 10% of the disease cases, and whereas advanced prostate cancer commonly spreads to the bones, which can cause pain in the hips, spine, ribs, or other areas in the body, and whereas the survival rate approaches 100% when prostate cancer is diagnosed and treated early, but drops to 28% when it spreads to other parts of the body. And whereas the American Cancer Society recommends that men should have an opportunity to make an informed decision about whether to be tested for prostate cancer based on their personal values and preferences, and whereas the City of Millbrae joins communities across our nation to increase awareness about the importance for men to make an informed decision with their health care provider about early detection and testing for prostate cancer. Now, therefore, we, the members of the Millbrae City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2016 as Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. Thank you.
Thank you. Just like to thank all the members of the council for lending your support to calling attention to Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. I represent actually the California Prostate Cancer Coalition, which is a group of people who want to further education and information about prostate cancer, which, as the proclamation says, is imminently curable if diagnosed early enough. And along this line, we urge all men to at least review with their physicians about obtaining PSAs in the same way that women get mammography. Thank you very much.
Next, I was hoping for a presentation with Kathleen Kimura. Can you come up and speak with regards to the Millbrae Japanese Cultural Festival?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, City Council members. And I can't believe a year has passed since we celebrated our 10th anniversary of the Japanese Culture Festival, but we will be celebrating the 11th annual Japanese Culture Festival here in Civic Center Plaza on Sunday, October 2nd from 10:30 to 4:30. And we welcome all members of the community to come. I would like to thank the City of Millbrae for their incredible support. We've really had incredible support from the city. We'd like to thank you for all of that. The Millbrae Chamber of Commerce, all of our sponsors and our vendors, without whom we would not be able to put this festival on, because we are all a volunteer committee. I have Naomi here and I have Tomoka here, and they are 2 of our members of 8 that put this on, and we're all volunteers. Everyone's a volunteer that shows up on the day. We appreciate the Millbrae youth that come and help us, the Lions, the Red Cross Yes Team, Mills High School students, and we're sold out again. We have 10 food booths this year, which is 2 more than we had last year. We also will be selling wine and beer and sake, and lots of Japanese food, lots of commercial vendors, non-profits, wonderful stage presentations. It's going to be a very busy day. The weather, I think, is forecast to be about 77 degrees, which I think will be just perfect. So again, thank you all for your support. Without the city's support, without the city's help, without this venue, it wouldn't happen. So we've got the Consul General of Japan coming down again, and I hope all of you City Council members will be there. We'll look forward to welcoming you. David Louis from ABC7 News will be our MC this year. And the only sad thing is that on this picture you can see these flags that the community made about 7 or 8 years ago. They were all made from origami cranes, and one was a Japanese flag and one was a US flag, and they burnt with the community center. But we will make new ones, but we just don't have time to make them for this year. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
And that was like incredibly humble, because we are very thankful. That is probably one of the nicest events that we do have in our city. So thank you to your committee and yourself. At this time, I'd like to ask the Rotary Club of San Bruno recognition for the President, Josie McHale. Is she here? Josie? Oh, right there. Sorry, right in front of me. Come on up. Didn't see you sitting there. Whereas the Rotary Club of San Bruno is holding a sports drive asking the Cappuccino and San Bruno community to donate gently used sports equipment to be given to the Millbrae Recreation Department to replace sports equipment lost in the Millbrae Recreation Center fire. And whereas the Interact Club of Cappuccino High School is actively involved in the sports drive, and whereas the City of Millbrae wishes to extend its heartfelt thanks for their support. Now, therefore, we, the members of the Millbrae City Council, do hereby commend the Rotary Club of San Bruno for their generosity and their support. Thank you. And not only generosity and support, but the thought is huge. That was very, very, very sweet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. May I bring the Interact Club?
Yes, please, the Interact Club. They were already up on top. Bring them on up.
Come on up here, guys.
I have to say, I think, happened to be at the Terrace Cafe having lunch and run into the Interact member here. Want to come up for a second? Let me see. Kathy. And Kathy says, we want to do something at Cappuccino for the city of Millbrae. And I was so impressed that I said, I think it would be a great idea that you guys got some limelight with MCTV and some public thanks for your generosity and your thought. You're going to make great adults. Thank you so much. Would you like to say anything, Kat? You don't have to. You don't have to. Everybody just very grateful. Does anybody have any comments up front that they'd like to thank this young group of kids? Go ahead, council member.
I'm a proud Mustang. Thank you very much. Go Cappuccino. We greatly appreciate it as a community. It really means a lot to everyone. And the vice committee here, we're hoping to get the park open as quickly as we can and the tennis courts and everything else. So thank you so much for your help. It's really appreciated.
I, too, am a Cappuccino graduate, so thank you. It's great to see Mustangs here. How can we donate to your activity?
They can come by Cappuccino High School. We have a bin outside our front office at the admin office where you could donate the gently used sports equipment there. I have to say that this idea really came from the Cappuccino Interact Club. This did not come from any adults giving them that idea. They came and they really took that idea and pushed it forward to our entire community, and then decided to donate the used equipment to Millbrae Rec Center. So thank you, Mayor, for the recognition. Thank you, council members, for the recognition as well.
Every single one of you, thank you very much. You want everybody to introduce themselves? Oh, why not? Go ahead.
I'm Iman. I'm a junior at Cappuccino, and I am the co-president of the Interact Club.
My name's Christina Padilla. I'm also a junior and co-president of the Interact Club.
Hi, everyone. My name's Kathy, and I am a sophomore, and I am the vice president.
Hi, guys. I'm Miles. I'm a junior, and I'm in charge of the team bonding.
Go, Miles.
Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm a junior, and I'm membership.
I'm also Michael, and I'm a junior, and I write the newsletter.
I'm Giselle. I'm a junior, and I'm in charge of the social media.
And I'm Josmos, and I'm also a junior, and I'm also team bonding with Miles over here.
All right.
And I could have worn green and gold tonight.
That would be great. Thank you guys very much. Thank you so much. Go do homework. So next we're going to go to the agenda overview, but before we do that, I don't know if anybody noticed in the audience something a little bit different in the crowd here. Our city manager is out of office, and we have a very capable city manager taking her place. Rod, would you like to introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are, and then we'll do the agenda overview.
All right, thank you, Mayor. My name is Rod Gould, and I had the call from Marsha Raines a few weeks ago asking if I would sit in for her for these 10 days while she is pursuing graduate education, and it's an honor. On your agenda this evening, you have a handful of items for council deliberation and consideration. On the consent calendar is your second reading of an ordinance that will conform your municipal elections to the statewide cycle. You will also have a hearing and first reading of an ordinance having to do with development impact fees in the Millbrae Station area plan, with quite a bit of consultant work that backs it up. Then you will also consider a fairly comprehensive reform of the city's commissions and committees. And then lastly, you have a request by Councilmember Pappen for support for a letter that she sent this past week to the City County Association of Governments regarding the transportation plan. That's the overview.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move to the first item of business, and first is going to be approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of July 12, 2016. Yes. Okay.
I believe Gino Caccia is Gino. That's the Italian way of spelling that, and it's misspelled twice. No, it's not. It's actually Geno? Oh, okay. There we go.
Are we talking about the minutes?
Yeah, minutes.
His name is spelled right.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know where you're taking that. All right. So we have a motion and we have a second. Could we please have a vote?
The minutes were unanimously approved.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on to public communication, and first up is Janet Creech talking. Is this about an agenda item? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, this is just a general question. On the agenda, there's a place where it says you're going to waive a first reading and waive a second reading, and I just wonder what that means. On the surface, it looks like you're hurrying through something without a complete cycle of airing and response, and can you explain it to me what it means? Thank you.
I'd be happy to respond. Under state law, the city council, when it acts to adopt an ordinance, is required to take up the matter at 2 different meetings. So the action of waiving the reading means that the city council does not need to read the ordinance out loud, word by word. It's obviously published. So the first ordinance on the agenda, which involves the election cycle, was previously considered by the council. So this is the second reading. They're not going to read it word for word, but they can then vote to adopt that ordinance because this is the second time it's come before the council. With regard to the ordinance on the stationary specific plan development impact fees, This is the first time the council has seen that matter. So again, they're not going to read the ordinance word for word, but they will introduce the ordinance, which means that at the next council meeting they can act to adopt it. So that's
literal reading.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next up is Wynn.
Good evening. My name is Wynn Gersich, and last time I was here, you had the Chinese Trade Commissioner, and I did not have this in my hand, but I went to bring it this time. The Epoch Weekend Times, and this was June 30th through July 6th, it says up to 1.5 million killed in China for their organs. The new report details how China's regime built a mass transplant industry through harvesting organs from the prisoners of the conscious, mainly Falun Gong practitioners. So anyway, this thing talks about how many millions they're making in these transplant thing, and if you've got an in with the trade commissioner from China, and your recycled toilet water thing is up and running with all the chemicals that kill people's kidneys, if you read Chloramine Causes Collateral Health Damage by Dr. Wynn Parker, it's a good way to get organs. But this is kind of amazing because they're killing these people because they don't believe in a type of religion. They're doing yoga and healthy things. But it's a good way. And they said that these organ transplants, they have 24-hour shifts, and the doctors are doing back-to-back transplant surgeries. And the money that they've made, I mean, it's amazing. It's jumped from 4.5 million to 34 million in China. And this is really kind of unprecedented for the fact that the United Nations wants to put chloramine in globally. So if they're doing this in China, what do you think is going to be happening here next? This is scary. So one of the other things that I'm talking about tonight is about vaccinations. And please read Chloramine Causes Collateral Health Damage because you can see how chloramine kills your kidneys. And in 2005, Kaiser was sued for not doing enough kidney transplants on my side of the bay. And then when they added the poison, the ammonia into your water, then people's kidneys were failing, more strokes were happening. So they built the stroke unit on Mills Peninsula. And all of this is from adding ammonia to the drinking water. And if you listen to the biological warfare that they're using in Syria, they used fluorine gas. That's fluoride. So when you look at also the things that they're using, the chlorine, they're using the same stuff they put in our drinking water when they do these horrible things in war using biological warfare. They use the chemicals that we drink to kill people with. So that to give you a clue, we need alternative technology. But I'm going to talk about vaccinations right now, and I put this on public record about the mandatory shots. And I've also put down, too, their movie Vax is now on Amazon.com. And I think that the city should purchase it and put it on your public access channel. This was the video that proves that the MMR shot causes autism. And secondly is the fact that these vaccinations, right now, children have to have 72 vaccinations by the time they're 18, and they're loaded with aluminum. And the FDA says 5 mcg's aluminum is allowable. When the first shot a baby gets has 280. So when you are loaded with aluminum and you go by a cell phone tower, you go by these smart meters that are emitting electromagnetic waves, what happens when you put aluminum in a microwave? It pops. And for all you senior citizens, every flu shot has thimerosal in it, which is thimerosal, which is mercury. You should read Robert F. Kennedy's book on thimerosal. But we need to get this stopped. We need to get referendum 277 back on the ballot and keep Jerry Brown's religious exemption. Thank you.
Next up, we have Sarah, and she wants to come up with 4 people.
Hi, my name is Sarah Anderson, and I moved to Millbrae about 6.5 years ago. And these are some of my neighbors on each side of my house. We have talked to Michael in the water department a couple times about the V-ditch, I learned that term, behind our houses. Right now, it has water in it. And do you know how long it's been since it's rained? Quite a time, huh? It was clean. I went out there Friday. I cleaned mine all up of leaves. And my neighbors did theirs. And I looked at them and I thought, wow, this really looks great. And I went out there Sunday and we took pictures and there's water. And quite a bit of water. And the problem is it sits there once it gets there. So should I just hand these photos down? Thank you. And mosquitoes. And you were talking about pollution week. One lady has been out from the public health, was it? And she took samples of the water and never got back to us. And anyway, different people have been out. I'm concerned about it sits there because it was put in, my understanding, is in the 50s. And it has changed a little bit as far as going up and down. Anyway, it's a concern to us. We've talked to the water people many times. We have been told, and we got a letter this week, that the easement is our problem and nothing from the city. Well, I'd like to know when that easement was built. They told me the homeowners that bought their home built the easement. Are you telling me that every homeowner on that street had to put in their own V-ditch? I find that hard to believe. And if the houses were there first, how are they going to get trucks or whatever they make this cement V-ditch out of? How are they going to get it through all the yards? I mean, I've asked questions and I have not got positive answers. And we really are concerned about the water sitting there. If your neighbors don't cooperate, their junk comes right down and gets in my yard. And the apartment house, which is above us, let's say if that was the apartment house, the gray, their junk and dirt and water come right down in the easement. And then I'm told it's my problem. So we're really concerned about getting more proper cooperation from the city about this easement problem. And I really would like some help on it. And I go out there and sweep it up, all the leaves, like every other day. And I think, how much longer can I go out there and sweep? I've even gone out there and swept water, so it would go down the block and not come back to my house. So thank you.
Can you tell us what block you're on?
I have it right here. I was just going to give it to staff to make sure that we can get a follow-up on this. It's on San Anselmo.
San Anselmo?
Yeah, we're all on San Anselmo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kay Wilkes, and I have pictures here I would like to share and questions I would like to ask.
So Kay, just so you know, for this format, the questions that you ask, we were not going to have the answers for.
It's okay, I understand, but
I think
I
that
understand.
We directed this issue straight to staff right now. I mean, go ahead. You're welcome to speak, but I just want to know that you to know that we're not being rude by not answering. It's just not the format.
I absolutely understand.
Thank you.
But what the questions I want to propose are something to think about.
Perfect.
I know if my gutter goes into her yard, that's illegal. If you look at these pictures, there are pipes coming from those two apartment buildings pouring water into the ditch. Right now, there is absolutely no rain. When it rains, every one of us have cinder block walls. Every year, it has to raise because of the water level. Now, if the town of Millbrae let water run down the side of the road, that would be illegal. Why are we hauling away their sewage? Sometimes it's been sewage. I didn't bring water with me tonight because I don't want to expose you to God knows what. And I do know that mosquitoes and standing water, that's all we hear anymore about the diseases, okay? I'm talking for the children of this community because smoke does not stay with fire. Chemicals to come out and kill the mosquitoes is totally unaccepted. Thank you, Wendy. People have come out, taken mosquitoes away. We never hear a word. People come out, taking sample waters. We never hear a word. But the bottom line is, why is this V-ditch having to be built up like a river so we can accommodate what's going on behind us? The other thing is, when I went over and inspected everything, I am completely convinced it's an infrastructure problem for the city of Millbrae. That somewhere along the way, the fact that this water is in the ditch and there is no rain, and I've looked in the drainages, the cigarettes butts would be in the drainage ditch. So where this water is coming from, somewhere the sewer system has a leak, or a hole, but it is definite right there in those pictures. And seeing as how this is Anti-Pollution Week, this is a perfect time to be here. And I really, really appreciate your time, your consideration, and, you know, please help the children of this community, because mosquitoes, we don't need them. West Nile virus is below us. Let's keep it that way. Let's keep Zika somewhere else. Let's keep mosquito bites while you're scratching at night in your sleep somewhere else. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoy my pictures. I'm a great photographer.
Thank you.
My name is Judy, and excuse my English, I'm not so good. But this time I try my best to express myself and represent my kids. Like this picture, I just take it from my daughter. See the mosquito bite, and also I catch a few mosquitoes, and also in here, you know. And my daughter at night, the mosquito, you know, make noise in her bedroom. She's so scared. She have to cover up when she sleep, because the water, the dirty water in my backyard, and creates mosquitoes. And also at night, those raccoons and skunks come over to drink those water. Just stinky, and also make noise, just have party in our backyard. It's very scary. And Sari and me come over to the city complaints 2 years ago, and they send the people to just extend the pipe a little bit longer. But those water still running to our backyard. It doesn't help. Just extend the pipe. So when I purchased this house, I don't know there's water, coming on and off to my backyard, and I pay $9,000 every year for property tax. And if it's my property, I don't want any dirty water running to my backyard. You know, those water are very, very stinky, and have mosquitoes. So I really, want to let you guys know. Hopefully, you guys could help me.
Thank you.
My family. Thank you.
I think the previous three ladies before me spoke enough, but I think she wants me to summarize. I'm her son, Alex. There's more people speaking.
I only have forms for. I have to have a form if you're going to speak.
She's also my next door neighbor.
Okay.
Yeah.
But sorry, I lost my voice. So, but really, and the pipe and dirty water and comes to my backyard.
Yeah.
So I
2
think
years ago, her backyard, the pipe have peas and pools running to her backyard, and she have called the Millbrae department, and Millbrae department sends people to clean her backyard. I don't know, those are dirty water and peas and pools.
I think
that's a record in
I think staff
city.
I think staff has enough to. Do you have enough information to be able to take care of this tomorrow? Direct some direction for it tomorrow.
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Okay, that's it for public communication? Thank you. We have one item on the consent calendar, and that is an ordinance amending section 2.35.010, municipal elections of the Millbrae Municipal Code, and there is action that we need to take on that. We want to waive the second reading and adopt the ordinance. We have a motion and we have a second. Can we please have a vote?
Consent calendar item 5 was unanimously approved.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to open to a public hearing. And anybody that would like to speak on this matter can fill out a slip and bring it forward. And we have...
Christy Diorio
Right.
will introduce this item and the lead consultant.
Thank you, Christy. And we do have somebody that would like to speak on it.
Good evening. So tonight we have before you is the Millbrae Station Area Specific Plan, the impact fees. And tonight is the review of the ordinance. When you received in your packet the changes to the ordinance, that's chapter 10.05 of the Millbrae Station Area Development Impact Fee. Also, we are going to go through the development impact fee, and we have our consultants here from Economic and Planning Systems, Typhion, Rice Evans, and Jenny Lynn, and they will take you through the rest of the packet and the establishment of the fees that will be charged at the time of building permit issuance for the type of land use and the generation of what the growth impacts are to the various topics that you've reviewed under a feasibility study back in March. So I went over it generally, and just as some background, this ordinance was adopted in 2000 with the specific plan that was adopted in 1998. A study at that time was prepared, and again, it was to mitigate the adverse impacts. And then the specific plan was adopted in 2016, the amendment to the specific plan. And that amendment created some technical changes that required the update to this fee ordinance. And also, you did review the feasibility study back in March. We will have the second reading in 2 weeks, as we discussed earlier. And at that time, we would also look at the adoption of the rate setting resolution that you also received in your packet. That's not an action that will be taken tonight. It will be taken in 2 weeks. So with that, I'll have Typhion go ahead and give the presentation, and then Ray and I are here too as well for answer any questions.
Great. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. Typhion Rice Evans with Economic and Planning Systems, and here to basically give you an overview of the work we've conducted, building on a lot of work you've already done to convert it really into an area development impact fee, which, if adopted, will allow you to raise the funding needed to fund the infrastructure and other capital facility improvements envisioned to help implement your specific plan. I wanted to start off, let me make sure, there we go. Just want to start off with a brief introduction to impact fees, just to kind of clarify what they are and what they are not, and then get a little bit more into the details of the study and the work we did. So briefly, impact fees are one-time charges on new development that can fund capital improvements, capital facilities, infrastructure. They can only fund the proportion of the costs that are directly associated with new development. So there's a very clear kind of connection that is made there. If you need to fund infrastructure costs that aren't associated with the new development, then you need to look to other funding sources to fund that portion of your costs. And critically, they cannot fund the ongoing operations and maintenance of these facilities. So we're really just talking here about the capital facilities stated collectively. Impact fees must be adopted consistent with California law, and a host of statutes and court cases have kind of opined on this issue. But the Mitigation Fee Act is the fundamental piece of California law, also known as AB 1600 and Government Code Section 66,000. The impact fees and the studies we do to adopt them, the nexus studies, must make a series of findings related to the purpose of the fee, the use of the fee, the relationship between the new development and the new capital facilities, the need for the new capital facilities, and the proportionality between the costs of the facilities required to serve the new development and the fee levels. And that's kind of, if you look in the technical analysis that I think is also in your package, you'll see that we go through that set of logic for each of the capital facilities that we're potentially adopting or looking into adopting here. Fees, common development impact fees, you will see, number of cities in California have citywide fees. Some have area-specific fees. Here, clearly tonight we're talking about an area-specific fee. Common kinds of facilities or very common impact fees we see for transportation, parks and recreation, water and wastewater. You'll also see some cities will have fees funding public safety capital facilities, as well as kind of civic and community center type facilities. We always, as kind of public finance consultants, but also as economists, we also like to also stress that's important, I think, generally for the council or policymakers to think about the economic effects of the fee decisions. And I think there's a few things that are worth pointing out. Impact fees generally provide some kind of certainty and clarity to the development community, so they at least know what you're charging them for particular kinds of facilities. I think in the sense that they are investments, in the sense that they facilitate new development and build new amenities, they can create value, they add value to development, and create opportunities for development. At the same time, it's important, I think, to recognize that impact fees are additions to development costs. So they are additional costs on developers that can have an effect on the feasibility of new development. And so I think that it's important to, at least as we implement new fees, think about the aggregate level of fees on new development and ensure that they're not so burdensome that you're going to actually prevent the implementation of a plan that you're actually attempting to implement, if that makes sense. In terms of the kind of study background and methodology, I want to re-highlight a couple of things Christy mentioned, because the work that we've done is really built on the foundation of the specific plan and all the work you've done on that front, and then also on the work that was done and I think approved by council in March 2016, the feasibility studies, which are really a series of technical studies looking in depth at a whole set of at really all the different kinds of facilities that we're looking at. So the transportation, the parks and rec, the wastewater, all these other components you're looking at. So we really built on top of those studies. In terms of the kind of process, the analytical process that I'll run through in a little more detail here, the key steps really involve understanding the amount of new development that is involved. That's kind of the development under the specific plan, identifying the new capital facilities costs, understanding the new capital facilities, understanding their costs and their cost allocations, and then finally that all kind of builds you up into a set of fees, a proposed fee schedule that you would then impose on new development as it occurs. Here, hopefully this is readable, but basically this is from the EIR, the specific plan EIR, and as you can see, it basically lays out the development program that has been approved under the EIR, and is kind of what drives in some ways the need for the capital facilities, but is also the set of development on which you would impose these fees. And you can kind of see there on the development program column, you have 1,400 or so units, 1.5 million square feet of office, 140,000 square feet of retail, 325 hotel rooms, et cetera, et cetera. It's also important to understand, and this is also from the EIR, that a lot of what drives the need for the infrastructure and the facilities is the actual the occupants of those buildings. So the number of new residents that we're projecting, the number of new employees, those assumptions you see on the right are also important drivers in this kind of technical connection between new development and facility need. Here is just a map. It's probably familiar to you from the land use plan, and it's probably helpful just to understand the combination of areas, the mixed-use areas under the TOD 1 and TOD 2 and the other areas. It's also important that in the wastewater fee, as you'll see, there's a small piece of infrastructure that applies only outside of the TODO areas. So you'll see that that's there's a slightly additional and slightly higher fee that applies in the retail 1, 2, office, and residential 4 areas than in the other areas. So to talk about capital facilities, what exactly is it that these fees are there to fund? So again, from the technical studies, we know there's about $23.7 million in improvements that we're looking to fund. Now, a big portion of that is related to the Bay Trail. And so working with the transportation consultants, it's been envisioned that we will be able to get a substantial set of funding from grants and other sources to pay for a portion of the Bay Trail. So when we take that out, we're left with about $10.7 million in transportation improvements that are required to serve the specific plan area. And that's kind of in some ways the financing challenge we have, and we in turn allocate that $10.7 million across the different land uses to convert it into a fee. We allocate those based on trip generation rates, which were also developed in the technical work you had done. Wastewater, we have a $10.1 million improvement, the largest improvement for the rainfall infiltration inflow improvements, and I'll let a civil engineer who knows more than I do explain what exactly that is, but that's the kind of the big improvement. Those, again, get allocated in their own way, in this case, based on the average daily water flow by land use. That's the way we allocate that between the different land uses. And you'll also see there we have one smaller or lower cost improvement, the gravity main improvements, $133,000. That's an improvement that only serves those non-TOD areas, and that's the portion that converts into a small add-on fee for that particular area that I'll show you here in a minute. On the public safety side, the technical study kind of gave us a range of costs, so we took the midpoint of those of the estimates. You'll see that the costs are more modest in scale, about $580,000, and they're ready to help fund the fire station upgrade, motorcycle and equipment, and another officer vehicle. And here we allocate those public safety improvements between residential and non-residential development on the basis that 2 employees generate about the same amount of demand as 1 resident in this particular case. Parks and Rec was the one that was in some ways more, a little more unusual, a little bit more complicated, unlike the other capital facilities items where we had a very clear technical study that said this is exactly what we need. With Parks and Rec, there was an issue of, the council wanted to get an appropriate contribution from the development on the specific plan. And so I think the approach that was taken, which is common in these kinds of situations, is a service standard approach where we looked across the city and said, what is the service standard in the city in terms of providing parks, and then applied that to the new development. Now, one of the issues we looked basically at the city's general plan that indicated there's about 44.7 acres of developed parkland that are owned or under long-term lease to the city. And this number is important because there are different ways to, if we were to be more aggressive and include lands owned by the school districts or others, you could get to a higher standard. But we felt it prudent to take a kind of more conservative approach by focusing really on the parkland owned or under controlled by the city. And then when combined with the service population concept, we end up with a standard of about 1.86 acres of developed parkland per 1,000 service population. And that's the standard we then apply to new development. And this is a bit of, frankly, too dense of a paragraph here, but I think in a nutshell, what this translates into this requirement of about 1.86 acres per 1,000 service population, it translates into the need for about $28 million in investment through parks. So basically, coupling the standard with the cost per acre of buying the parkland and investing in the parkland, about a $3.7 million per acre cost, would result in fees that would generate in the order of $28 million in parks fees. And again, these costs are allocated based on a service population approach, though in this case more weight is given to the residential than the non-residential based on typical kind of factors of how office versus residents use parkland. So that's kind of in some ways, a very technical set of work summarized. And basically what it translates into is to this fee schedule, where you can see that what we're saying here is the residential development, one new unit of multifamily residential would pay an area development impact fee if adopted as such, of about $18,300. And that I should note that all of these fees include a 2% add-on administrative fee, which is quite typical for these fee programs, which involves the update and auditing and all the rest. And you can see there on the total on the right-hand side, those fees going down. Office is $11 per square foot thereabouts. Retail is higher at $45 per square foot. Hotel is $6,700 per square foot, and industrial non-retail is $5 per square foot, and that's really there. I don't think. Well, it was there if there were new industrial non-retail development, that would be applicable. But it's also there for those cases where you're redeveloping those spaces, and so some kind of level of credit may be appropriate. And finally, the final slide is basically very similar to this one. It's hard to see any difference, frankly, but there's a small increase in the numbers. This is where we add in that small wastewater improvement cost, and the numbers go up marginally, basically, for the sewer numbers or the wastewater numbers go up marginally, therefore changing the fee slightly for those areas that are outside of the TOD set of numbers. So that's the overall flow of things. This, I wanted to note, end by noting that this fee program kind of, when applied, basically ensures sufficient revenue to cover the costs identified by the technical consultants in helping to implement the plan, with the exception of the portion of the Bay Trail that is assumed to come from other funding sources. So it kind of ultimately is a balanced financing mechanism for what I think you're trying to achieve with the specific plan. And I think I'm going to hand it back to Christy now for the final slide, I believe. Or maybe not. Is there a final slide? It's disappeared. Nope. Sorry. Maybe at the end there.
Well,
do you want to look for it? There it is.
Okay. Okay, you saw it really quickly. It was just the action that's to be taken tonight. Again, and you noted in your staff report, it's the ordinance, and the ordinance change is simply where it was changed to reflect the current report as opposed to the report that was done for the 1998 specific plan. So you'll see the reference as the feasibility study. And also the change is the list of infrastructure projects that were in the existing ordinance have been updated to reflect the categories that have been evaluated under the studies that you've reviewed tonight. Those are the two changes to the ordinance. And as I said, you've also it's attached the findings to be made. And then the action tonight would be to adopt the ordinance, and then the second reading and the resolution adopting the fees would be under at the next meeting. And that is done under resolution, so it can be updated and not having to go through the ordinance amendments. So if you have any questions, that's the action for this evening.
Sure, we have questions. We also, if any of the public wanted to have questions. I have a question.
You can submit a slip and bring it up. Councilmember Schneider, did you want to start?
It's hard when it's multiple documents. It's difficult when it's multiple documents to know where to start. So I'm going to just start with the cover memo. And on page 2, 2 questions. One, there's a comment in the second paragraph that says by minute motion. I don't know what a minute motion is. It's as it's March 22nd, 2016 meeting, the City Council by minute motion. It's probably not at all important, but I don't know what that means.
There wasn't a resolution. You just accepted the report.
Okay.
When you reviewed it in March.
Okay.
So you reviewed that. We had a presentation at the time by the consultant, and with the study that was established.
The mic, Christy.
Oh, sorry. It was the feasibility study is what you accepted the last time, and that's contained in your document in your packet tonight.
Okay. The serving on the subcommittee to look at committees and commissions that are going to be discussed later tonight. One of those is cultural arts. And one of the things that came up is we've long had a cultural arts commission, but no funding source for it. So is it allowable in this set of fees to set a small, tiny percentage aside for cultural arts, whether that's murals, sculpture, even ground can be made into a cultural art facility, although that probably falls under parks. And I didn't know that, but I know that the Councilman Lee and I talked about, wow, that poor committee has never had a funding source and therefore has never done anything.
It's not funding the committee, it's funding the project.
The actual project, the actual piece of art. Or let's say there was even a small built-in permanent bandstand at BART. If that's what we chose to do and it's not part of parks, is that something that could be a reasonable fee?
Just to say that when you say it's not part of parks, then that is an issue. I mean, if it can be incorporated as part of the park or the facility or that whatever is identified that is to be funded through these impact fees, then that's a possibility, but it needs to be incorporated into the actual project, and that would probably be Parks and Rec.
Okay, and that would be but if art were in other places around the city, that couldn't because it's not specific to the projects?
It's not that it's not specific to, yes, it's the projects, the capital improvement projects. It has to be specific to those projects.
Could we require public art in those projects?
Requiring public art, not necessarily. We have a discussion that if we have an ordinance that has anything with requiring development, provide public art. We have a discussion of that in this specific plan. We also have community benefits as well that offer the opportunity for the developer to provide public art as a part of their project. And we would consider it as a community benefit under the development agreement. So there's other opportunities. This is more specific to infrastructure and meeting the growth demands that bring on this types of.
Then I'm really glad to see that it's no longer $48 million or $48,000 per unit for a park. But I'm still curious, knowing how Millbrae is structured, when you consider the park fees, and there is a component of buying land. What land are we considering purchasing? Because there really isn't that much land out there to purchase. So I just don't know where those numbers come from. I looked and I might have missed it with all the other reading tonight, so I apologize if I did. I just want to make sure that we're fair, but we do get what our parks need. If this is to put an adequate crossover Millbrae Avenue and El Camino Real to be able to get to the Spur property or to get to the park that's in Bayside Manor, would those kinds of infrastructure costs be included?
Council is currently underway with, the city's underway with a parks master plan and the update to the existing parks master plan. This will be the roadmap for what types of, where the monies would go towards different projects. So when you ask those questions, it would probably be under the master plan when you're updating that.
And if the fees weren't sufficient, would we then have to come back and update the resolution for additional fees?
The fees aren't necessarily based upon the project itself. It's based upon, as the consultant was referring to, it's based upon the generation, based upon the population of the people that are adding to the growth of the community.
And then sort of my last, really overriding, I've got lots of tiny questions, but they can wait. We approved a 9-unit housing development on Hermosa without having updated developer fees. I had thought during that discussion that the developer fees you were bringing today were going to be greater than just a specific area. But this is just specific area, and that means that the developer on Hermosa is not subject to anything or really old fees. So we've got one development moving ahead right now, not really paying its way, and these that are going to be paying significantly more than our current fees. And I'm just looking for equity and fairness.
The current fees that we're speaking to are the current fees that are in the specific plan, the fees that were done specifically for the 1998 plan. The city does not have development impact fees. They have some specific to Parks and Rec, Some of it has to do with the wording of Quinby and that type of thing in lieu fees. So one of the things that the council did adopt in the budget is an update to, or even creating development impact fees. This is one step that will help us because, as was mentioned, Parks and Rec, we needed to look at citywide to be able to come up with the fees for the specific plan area. So we're kind of steps away from that, and it is budgeted, and it is something that the council has identified for the next fiscal year. So it's just a matter of staff having the time to put the package together to bring to you.
And one last one, switching over to fire, because I know that we've got a couple of projects coming forward. Some are 5 stories, some I believe, or one I believe is going to be 10 stories. What triggers the need for additional fire engines where you have to have a ladder? And is that borne by the entire 116 acres, or is that borne just for those buildings that are that tall?
What's the 10-story?
Site 1, TOD 1, Sarah Station.
We aren't looking particularly at the projects. This, again, was the generation of looking at the height requirements generally. The answer to your question is that we would be doing, the city would be doing a similar feasibility study, similar to what we did with, you'll see in one of those technical studies, was prepared with a questionnaire, both to police and fire, and what their needs are based upon the development and the build out. So we'll be looking at, for the overall citywide impact fees, we'll be looking at the population build out and also what their needs are to accommodate that growth. So we'll be looking more specifically at that when we do the citywide fees.
So I appreciate this and all the work, and I thank you for that. I find it a little scary to be approving fees with still so many unknowns. So that's just where I'm at.
Sorry. Anything else?
Well, you said you had some little questions, but I don't know what that meant. You want to finish up so we can?
No, they're probably more on the other documents, and it's hard to jump from document to document. So I'll see what everybody else has. It might get answered.
I would just add to that last bit that both police chief and fire chief have examined the analysis and the recommendations and are very comfortable with them.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I had a question about the assumption of the grants for the Bay Trail extension. It seems to me to be a little bit wishful thinking that we'll be able to get $13 million from those in grants to support the Bay Trail and therefore not require as much in development fees. So can you go over how you came to that number and how we're comfortable with that?
I think both of us can answer that question. We've talked about it because it's not just grant monies. As I said, when we evaluated this, we were considering citywide fees. So there's, it is a regional trail. So we're looking at incorporating that cost into the citywide fees. So with any new development coming in, that's something that we would provide to the council to consider. So it's not all grant monies. It would also be the rest of the impact fees for the rest of the city as well.
Do you know about how much you expect from grants as opposed to other funding sources?
I really can't say. Just the other day I was telling Ray that we just got a grant application request, and it seems to fit, and we were going to talk about it. And that's not $13 million, but it's certainly a start in putting the design together. So they are coming up more and more frequently because of the interest of providing that pedestrian. That's what you're going to be talking about later, and that's what's in their CCAG report is the emphasis on bike and pedestrian access. So we do have one coming up that's up to $1.5 million, a grant application that would be, we could fit the criteria.
Vice Mayor? Can I just add to that? These grants, do they require matching fees?
There's usually like an in-kind fee, which is staff time, quite a bit of the time. It just depends, but this one is an in-kind with staff time.
Ruben?
And I think, sorry.
Because I serve on CCAG's Bike Pedestrian Committee, and I was the one that forwarded the 2 grant cycles coming up, there's a nice opportunity to try to get significant grants in that. But one of them, which is for $5.9 million, the entire fund, is for 5 years. So it's one of those, we need to move now. We shouldn't be sitting for too long on that, because it won't come up again for another 5 years from that pot of money.
if I could just add that I think one of the other parts of, in addition to the possibility of having grant and other funding, one of the concerns was that because the Bay Trail services provides amenity to a larger group than just those in the new development area, they're trying to put all of that cost on that development could be seen as not consistent with the kind of proportionality requirement. So we thought those two things together led to a potential solution.
Okay, that makes a bit more sense. I did have another question about the parks and recreation fees and the large discrepancy between the previous amount of $48,000 per unit and now, I believe, $18,000?
14 to 40.
14,000.
1,000 per unit. Is the primary, you went over a bit of the methodology, how you calculated that out, but is that also, in terms of the total amount of revenue we're going to need to raise for, to meet the parks and recreation services of these developments, is that total amount changed, or is it, divided up in a different way? I see that the new fees include Parks and Rec fees for all the different uses besides residential, whereas in the previous report it was only applied to residential.
Right. Yeah. So you're right. There's two things going on there. One is that the service standard that was being used before seemed to us to be on the kind of more aggressive high side. So in going with kind of what the general plan told us about developed city parklands, we felt more comfortable with that, and that was kind of the main trigger of that adjustment. But you're also right that another trigger of the adjustment was, I think, based on, and this is not uncommon in other California communities, but if I understand correctly, the city council wanted to explore the opportunity of appropriately spreading those costs between residential and non-residential. And so in doing so, you're correct that actually would have further reduced the fee on residential as some of the costs got pushed onto non-residential based on the kind of analysis we did. So it's kind of both of those factors are relevant if I'm answering your question.
Okay, but the total revenue the city is requesting is reduced.
It's reduced,
in
yes.
terms of parks and recreation.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, but still sufficient for the you believe to be sufficient for the amount of development that we're creating here.
Yeah, based on
the service.
service standard
that we currently have.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
No, go to the public. Yeah, Robert, you're up. Wow.
I'm telling you.
Luck of the draw.
Just a couple questions for clarification. Good evening. So, wow, this is an interesting document to get to read on really short notice, but nice presentation. I have a question, and it kind of goes to where Ruben was going, but I'd like some clarification. When I look at city code, I see us sidestepping 10/20/50, which has a different standard and doesn't distinguish between developed land, parkland, versus parkland. So we have two codes at play here, okay? And one requires 5 acres per 1,000 of devoted land, but yet we're using the phrase developed parkland in the study, and it reduces the requirement from 5 acres to 1.86, which necessitates the decrease in the impact fee. Okay, so I'd like a better explanation as to why we're negotiating in two pieces of code, because there's one code, then we've got another one specifically for the BART. So we got two codes that are in conflict with two different requirements for parkland or fees associated with parklands, and we're using a phrase that I don't see in code. I don't see developed parkland in the code, so I'd love to see where that actually is as it pertains to Parks and Rec. And the second thing I'd like us to kind of understand is there is what doesn't make a lot of sense to me here is a significant traffic impact that you can tell by the scale of the development that is coming in here, whether it's in 3,800 people, which is on the slides, or 4,600 people, which is in the document, or whichever one of it is, there's a significant amount of traffic flow is going to be hitting, and I don't know, and I'd like a better explanation as to how we came up with such a low $10 million or so estimated cost for a significant traffic impairment. We're putting 3 hotels plus 1,400 units. There's no way that that's not a significant cost. So I'd like to better understand that as well. And I think you should too. Thanks.
Thank you. Does staff want to address that right now, please? Or do you want us to wait? No. You want to hear it now? Are you the boss?
So I think that there are different, I guess, approaches to establishing parks fees. I do, as I understand it, within the Quimby Code, which is the code that applies to, and I will rely on the city attorney to correct me if I say anything incorrect here, but in the Quimby Code, there's a requirement for 5 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. The Quimby Act is associated with Subdivision Map Act, so it really only applies typically, at least in my experience, to single-family subdivisions and condominiums. And what we're talking about here is kind of multifamily, I think, multifamily developments and non-residential developments. So the Mitigation Fee Act, I think, is the key driver of that. And I think as kind of as policymakers, as the analysts, we need to kind of, and recognizing we don't have a capital improvement plan, I think our goal was to come up with a service standard that seemed, I think, rational and appropriate. And so what we decided to do was to, as is very common in kind of Mitigation Fee Act studies for Parks and Recreation, was to turn to your existing service standard to determine what kind of investments and costs would be appropriate. In my mind, and this is pretty typical again for Parks and Recreation fees, you'll see two components, because they are often two components to parks: the parkland acquisition and the park development. And sometimes they're referred to as parkland, and people assume it means both. I've been, I guess, more specific here to make sure there's no, I guess, question that what I'm talking about is a standard, an existing standard that all the existing residents in the city collectively have kind of funded or paid for, which is very much for a set of land that is developed, and that's what I focus the service standard around. I think it's defensible and reasonable. It is different from your Quimby standard, which is very much focused on, again, applies to different kinds of development, but is focused on land only in that particular regard. And so, I'm sure there are potentially debates to be had, but I think this is a reasonable approach that allows, I think, the city to raise money for parks and recreation investments, including in facilities, including in land, as appropriate, in a manner that also seemed to be appropriately sized, within the documents we were reading. Again, it can be a policy debate, and so there certainly can be discussion as to whether or not there are alternative approaches that should be taken. This is the one that we thought was kind of logical and compelling, and after conversations with the city attorney and the community development department, is the one we wanted to recommend to you. So that's, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's generally the logic behind what we were thinking.
I don't agree.
Well, wait. Well, I think that what he said was it's okay to disagree, but it's a different policy. But do you have another question?
We didn't answer the question.
Okay, so let's
2050 is the one in the fine.
Let's restate the question.
There's a code conflict. You've got a Millbrae Station code you put in, and we're making an exception here of reducing the square acreage for the fees, for development impact fees, to 1.86. 10-20-40 actually talks about multifamily, residential, not just single family. So I think we need to go back here and take a look at what our existing code is, and not create an exception just to get this price to go down for development impact fees, because that's what it looks like. What it looks like is we're trying to reduce the developer impact fees. And I don't agree that it's a reasonable standard. And more importantly, your existing code says different. Our existing code says different. And it does say development, a public development. And it does list the other types of housing. So with all due respect, I think we need to come back and have that discussion again about what is fair before we set the development fees and agree to them. That's my only point.
Can legal counsel give some clarification? Do you have those codes?
Code section he's referring to is the city's implementation of the Quimby Act, which is focused on single-family residential development. I can go back and take a look at it. It's really not relevant to tonight's action. I would just point out that in applying that much higher standard, when we calculated the fees, we came up with a fee that was 3 times what any other city in the Bay Area was charging. It was just simply unsupportable. And since the plan, although we don't have a Parks Master Plan in place yet, the plan did not anticipate property acquisition. And what really caused that price would cause that price to go so high is the cost of land acquisition. So,
and relatively speaking, comparably to other cities, this is still higher than most.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
read that.
So there's two. I mean, I understand, from on the one hand, a desire to get as much as we can, but at the same time, we have to look at the development community, which can attack the fees if they're not adequately supported. So I think we feel comfortable both with the consultant's input that this was an appropriate methodology. It's not too high. It's as much as we felt we could reasonably get, and it's rationally related to the needs, particularly within this area.
Well, I do think it is relevant and should be mentioned here if you're going to go against an already written code. And for some of us who did not vote for the general plan for the very reason we didn't think that it was sufficient to move ahead with something like this. I understand why we have to here, but a couple of us were thinking that it was very premature in the first place because you're basing your numbers on the general plan that was passed by a majority of the council. I know where we're headed here, but I don't believe the community should be shortchanged either. So if we're going to move ahead or discuss this, I want it clear on the record about the existing code, which I do feel is relevant.
Could you explain shortchanged?
Yes. You're lower. I understand that, the fees originally came to be like 3 times the current amount, and then that seemed very unreasonable for developers, but you are lowering that rate to accommodate the developers, and so you are shortchanging the community at this point. So I just want to be clear for the record as to the existing code and why it's being set aside, and I think shortchanging the community.
So, Councilmember Pappen, I agree with you 100% except for 1% of it. It's not the developer, it's any developer.
Yes. My correction, thank you very much.
So we want to encourage developers, so that's the reasoning behind taking the fees a little bit lower or using your process of coming up with that fee, but we'll take into the public speaker that, yes, it does take into consideration that it could be higher. It should be higher. Councilmember Lee.
I have a question. So the impact fee, the blast impact fee was approved in 2010? Is that correct?
No, it was in 2000.
So obviously it's going to be a huge difference because inflation has gone up quite a bit on the real estate property values. My concern is, okay, it's too expensive for any developers. But then again, we get a nice pot of money, but we can't afford to build anything because we can't afford to buy anything with that nice pot of money. In other words, there's not enough money to do anything. So we get a nice chunk of change, and we can't do anything with it. So there's the dilemma. Do we charge so we can get something that pays for the impact? Or we just say, okay, we'll just take whatever we get.
Councilmember Lee, I don't believe that's accurate in that whatever fees are collected by the city are put towards our recreational community and
no, it's for building. No, it's not for maintaining. You cannot use the money to maintain. It's only used to build something. Acquisition.
That was the impact on our community.
Yeah.
Recreation.
In other words, we build and that's the other question. When we build something, we have to maintain it too. So in perpetuity, we're going to have to maintain that piece of property for 30 years. So think about that too. I mean, down the line. So I'm not saying we shouldn't collect money. I'm just saying that we need to collect money to build something here. This is for building something. So we need to collect enough money to build something. Otherwise, we're just collecting money just for the sake of collecting money.
Can we finish with the public comment? Or you want to go, Vice Mayor, and then we'll go.
Did both questions get answered?
No, we didn't talk about transportation yet.
Yeah, I was going to say the speaker also had a question about transportation, but regarding Councilmember Lee's comment, it's my understanding that we do not necessarily need to use the impact fees to to acquire park land. We can use it on capital projects within our existing parks system, correct?
Yeah, you can. It's set up in a way, the service standard approach, where you have some flexibility on that front. I think the thinking of us and the staff was that there may be. We don't know because we haven't gone through that process yet what it's going to be. We imagine it might be some combination of land needs and facility construction, but there's some flexibility there.
Well, we do have several parks that have major needs right now, with or without any development in the station area. I believe it likely, we are undergoing a parks master plan right now. Likely the better, more cost-efficient approach would be to make those much-needed improvements to the parks that we have that are, underserved, that are not, up to their full potential. So I think there will be plenty of opportunities to use these fees to vastly improve our park system.
Do we know when the parks plan is going to be completed?
Okay, can we address Robert's other question about the traffic transportation? I'm sorry, could you repeat it? So I apologize, but
okay. He said.
I'm sorry. I just want to get it right.
Okay, so the estimated cost is $23 million. I take out the $13 million for the Bay Trail, which I also would be interested to see how we're going to pay for. We're getting grants for $13 million. There's roughly $10 million inside the plan that talks about a little bit of a lane adjustment and a couple other small things. What I'm concerned about is I don't see how $10 million and the proposed adjustments to the lanes on Millbrae Avenue, Rollins, and Murchison and those intersections are really going to accommodate 3 hotels, 1,400 residents, 1,400 units, estimated up to 4,000 people just living and probably, and plus the hotels of boating in that area on any given day. So I'm concerned that we're going to create a larger traffic nightmare, and I'd like to understand how we came up with those improvements and that cost.
I would like to note...
Wait, let's answer this question, please.
Just along those lines, too. Can you emphasize, please, the access plan that's part of that? The station access plan that's supposed to be part of dealing with the traffic?
Let's answer the question first.
Yes. So what was asked was with regards to the project and its impacts on the circulation and the roads surrounding the project area. And that was evaluated under the environmental impact report that was certified in March. And what came from that is that, one, we do not own the roads is one thing. They are owned by Caltrans. There was overriding consideration for the improvements that of the roadway, and it was identified. These are mitigation measures that were identified in the EIR for the traffic circulation, and that's what was evaluated, and that was what was costed out as to what would be paid for through the development impact fees. And to answer your question, one of those impacts that was identified that's paid for by the developers is the comprehensive access plan. And so that's part of what comes out of the costs from the developers is to pay for the comprehensive access plan, which is to look at the roadways as well as the internal access and bikes and other modes of transportation to access the transit area and also to the downtown. Did I answer the question that you were
no,
asking?
I need clarification. I do believe we budgeted for our own access plan because we were not happy with what was being presented.
I'm not sure about the last, but not being happy about it. Is what I can answer is that you'll see in the feasibility study, we have a comprehensive access plan. Part of it is collecting the money and collecting it in a timely fashion. And it seemed that the council was prioritizing and wanting that comprehensive access plan done sooner than later. Therefore, it was budgeted with general fund monies, but there is an opportunity for that money to then be covered as we get money in for the impact fees that we collect. So then it would be coming from the developers paying for that rather than it being paid out of the general fund.
Okay.
So that's why it was you're wanting
right.
to prioritize it sooner, so that's why it was
Very much a
included.
priority.
Right.
Thank you.
But what about Rob's question? Did you get your answer? Okay, thank you. Gail?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I just wanted to speak to a couple of Robert's points because I totally...
He's going to point at the microphone. He's holding up the sign back there. Can you get closer? There.
Is that better? Yes. Thank you. I would like to respond to a couple of Robert's points because I totally agree with him and I think he expressed them very well. I do not, as a citizen of Millbrae, like hearing that my city council is going to be reasonable in their discussions with a developer. I want to hear from my city council members that you are going to be aggressive in representing the wants, needs, desires of the citizens of Millbrae, because I believe you have no responsibility to the developer. Your responsibility is to all the citizens of Millbrae. So I would encourage you to be aggressive in dealing with a developer. And secondly, I don't understand the codes and all of that. But when I see the size of this project, how many tens of millions of dollars is this company investing? $10.1 million for transportation impact? What percentage is that of the total development? It really sounds absurd because we know that the impact is going to be huge. And so that's what I want to say. Be more aggressive, and I do not think that transportation impact fees are, that's a drop in the bucket to the total project cost. So I think you need to look at that more carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet?
Most of my questions have been answered. Yay. Looking at the land use map that was presented in this presentation up here, I noticed that it doesn't line up with the land use map that was in the MSASP. Specifically, I don't know if we can even get the slide back up here. Specifically, the land on the south side of Adrian and to the east of Rollins Road is not included in this map, but it was in the old one. And I'm wondering if that's not being considered. And the other one is that what was listed as retail 1 was listed as TOD, and I'm wondering if the use has changed. And I just got a red light, so I'm thinking we're not using that thing anymore. The other on the park and rec, I think most of those questions have been answered, but if I am reading the document correctly, it looks as if a number of 2.6, okay. I don't have a pointer here, do I? This area right here is included in the old one, but not in this one. And this one is listed as TOD, and I'm wondering what the changes are. Did I miss something? Thank you. Thank you. And the other thing is a population density of 2.65 people per housing unit was used to calculate the impact of transportation, water, sewer, and public safety. But a density of 2.0 residents per unit was used to calculate park and rec. And if you look at the math on that, that means it suggests about 1,000 fewer people for park and rec calculations than for the others. And I'm wondering why that happened and if that affects the calculations. And last two, on transportation, I agree with everything that's been said. And I'm wondering, when the result of the access plan is looked at, who's going to pay for those improvements? How's that going to be addressed if it's not included in these impact fees? And I think I remember a long time ago, Urban Republic saying they would pay for the Bay Trail extension. Was that a dream I had somewhere? And I think that's it. Thank you.
The map is the reference to who pays the fees, not the specific plan area. So there was a discussion about additional fees being needed to paid for, and those were the areas that were identified with the land uses. It's not having to do with the land use designations. It's just referencing who's paying for extra fees. So that's the reason for this map. It doesn't change the specific plan map.
I have a question on that.
Yes, sorry.
Sorry.
And the engineer used this for the feasibility.
So those designations were used by the engineer in looking at the different sewer improvements that were needed to be able to designate which areas required those improvements. We have some areas where there are no improvements needed, so they weren't on his map. That's why it's different. But I can understand why it's confusing, because they use some of the same terms, but it's for a totally different purpose.
Vice Mayor?
I just wanted to clarify that the lower right-hand quarter that is not colored in, that section, if there were to be some type of a development in that area, would there be fees
Again,
applied
it's
to
not
that?
identifying who's paying fees.
Okay.
Everybody's paying fees. When you see the resolution, there's two fees that are being proposed, and that was explained, and I think Taifan can explain that again, but that will be attached to identify, so when they're paying the fees, they'll know that they're paying a little bit extra because they're in these identified areas, whereas the others are going to be paying the fees in the other table.
Okay, thank you.
Some of that area is already developed, though. So that's included.
Quite a bit of the area is already developed. Yeah. But it's with new development, and that's something that, why don't you can explain that again with her question.
This is not about the development. This is about any development going forward.
Right, in this area. This is what I'm talking about.
What I can do.
I just wonder how the calculations would change, because part of that area is already built out.
It would not change unless they developed it, redeveloped it.
I understand that.
If we can refer to exhibit, why don't you go to exhibit B? It's the resolution, it's attachment 2. In the very back, this is something that you'd be considering if the ordinance is adopted. So if you go there to that section, you'll see on page 4 and 5, you'll see a table 1 and a table 2 that follows your resolution. Is everybody there? And you'll see that you'll see a figure 1 development land use map. So that's tied to this table 2, which you'll see that the title says Summary of Maximum Capital Facility and Equipment Development Impact Fees applies only in Retail 1, Retail 2, Office 1, and Residential 4 areas. So if you were to go to the map, you'll see that if your project that you're developing or redeveloping, you will be paying these fees if you're in these areas. So that's the purpose of this map. It's for this specific table number 2 and the payment of fees. Does that clarify? And then, oh, yes, just a minute.
Yeah, so that was, it's a good observation, accurate observation by the commenter. So the EIR uses a population density of about 2.65 persons per household based on, I think, an ABAG average for the city as a whole. Again, here we had a couple of different points of information. The city's municipal code, and I described this on page 24 of the technical report, but it is an important point. The city's municipal code associated with the parks indicated a general assumption of 2 persons per household for the multifamily type dwelling unit. So in this case, the calculations we've used have applied 2 persons per household to multifamily based on that code piece. And I don't know enough to know how much the code must apply or whether there is a potential there to, if the council wanted to shift to the higher number to be consistent with the EIR document. But we used the number from the municipal code that we had found, which was the lower number of 2, which, as the commentator suggested, would reduce the fee to where it would be if we used a higher persons per household number.
Council?
I think that was a good catch, Janet. So I think we should make it better to the city.
So I guess the question is about the persons per household. We looked at the city municipal code and used that one in the case of parks, and whether or not we are in any way constrained to use that one, or whether we can use a higher number if the council so directs.
I think you could use a higher number. I am concerned in terms of the level of the fee and the fee, what's standard among other cities. So,
Okay, I'd just like to clarify here. Okay, we're not like any other city, and we are exceptionally small in any development that happens. We have just a small area which can be developed as we've been going over the general plan here. My concern is that, and again, I didn't vote for the EIR, but my colleagues did, and that seems to be the most recent numbers that they have committed to. So we need clarification here. I think my guess would be is that you have to go with the EIR.
What is the difference in the number? Can you do some simple math, or is it 30% of what, though?
So 30% higher population density, so you can assume that the fee would just shift up to be about 30% higher. So from 14,000 a unit to
20,000, yeah? Up to 20, right? 4 times 3, yeah.
21 would be 50%, but yeah, close to 20, a little bit less than 20.
Yeah, and stop saying we passed the IR. Just talk as a team. Yes, so
That seems to be the prevailing, you have to go with the EIR, I think.
yeah, Janet, do you want to? Can you come to the mic, please? Sorry.
It's consistent with the number that you used in all the other parts of these fee calculations: transportation, safety, sewage, yada yada.
Correct.
By changing the park fee up that 30%, that one fee.
Correct. Oh, no,
So that we're using the same population density across all categories.
Correct. So we have kind of a consensus on that thought, right, Council? Yes. All right. We might have a change there. Steve, do you want to speak?
So my name's Steve Henderson. I have a family here in Millbrae, 4 children. And so for us, at 6 in my household, just so you know, that might up your number a little bit. For those of us who live in Millbrae, we're very, very concerned. I think you can tell from the people speaking about some of the lack of specificity around this moving forward, and not exactly, you don't have to know exactly where you're going, but seemingly not allocating enough resources to the future Parks and Recreation plan, not having an existing parks master plan, and accepting from people who are saying what seems to be a comfortable and acceptable number to move forward with a development that we might be accepting a false sense of urgency about some of the concerns, and really need to be certain. Many of us have applied for the Parks and Recreation Commission and or have interest in seeing through what we're actually going to do, because we live here. So while you are kind of plotting the future and making the change for us, the legacy of this city council, and for me and the future of my family that I plan on raising here, I have concerns about the fact that we are moving on and maybe don't have enough information and maybe be accepting kind of a lowball figure on what we need to really provide for redoing the infrastructure of our parks. I don't know that any of the people who are involved in this development plan have walked through our parks and have seen what we have. And it's insulting and embarrassing as a member of the community not to be able to take my children to the park in my neighborhood because of the condition it's in. I sent pictures to Councilmember Wayne Lee, and I said in the pictures and the email that I sent to him, I will not be able to take my family to the park in my neighborhood for the 4th of July because it is a place that I cannot take my children to play. It's unsafe and dangerous, and it's embarrassing. Something needs to be done. So while we're sitting here talking about accepting a standard from people that are wanting to develop our city into the best possible future that we can have, we really have to be sure that what we're accepting will achieve that objective. Because again, the legacy of this city council, and for you, Mayor, thank you for your service, is to be sure that you do the business of the people who elected you. And I just don't want to see us accept something that is beneath us going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Kay? Is Kay here? I see glasses on. Kay Wilkes? Did she leave? Christopher?
My name is Christopher Del Negro. I am actually the chair for the Parks and Recreation Commission. I'd be remiss if I didn't speak on the topic, at least ask a couple questions. In particular, I'm really concerned about the evaluation of the amount of property you use for estimating the costs. If I understand it, you just said that you deleted out the school property as part of the estimation of current existing park space that's developed. Schools are developed property, and they're an absolute required field space for our rec program. Those schools are essential for existing programs. We don't have any other fields in the entire city of Millbrae that could be utilized for recreation programs. So by eliminating that property from your valuation, you're severely undercutting the current standard in Millbrae, and that concerns me greatly. I'm also a little bit insulted that 28 cents on the dollar from what was originally asked for is what's being proposed. I'm happy to see that with the catch from Janet, that we'd be up to 40 cents on the dollar, but a 60% discount on the anticipation of the Quimby standard seems dramatically lower than I would anticipate. We already have a parks and rec system that's underserving our population as is, not to mention, of course, the impending rebuild of a community center and recreation center. In addition, I look at the community's request for more facilities, more programs, and the lack of availability of resources that other communities around us already have. The vast majority of what I hear is I go to Burlingame for my rec program because Millbrae doesn't have enough. I go to San Bruno, I go to San Francisco. We are already underserving what we have, let alone building on a population increase of up to 4,000. But you're also saying you're bringing in 6,600 employees. Employees I know use the recreation programs in the communities they work, not just at their home. And that doesn't seem to be served as much in those estimations. While I understand there's a little bit in there, it doesn't seem that much. And 6,600 new employees is more than the actual number of residents you're bringing in. So I'm highly concerned by these numbers. I don't see it as being a service to the population. As far as transportation, I'm an avid cyclist. I bike from here to Mountain View pretty often. I go through the BART station, through Caltrains, or up California, and I see that as being a dramatic lynch point for bicyclists to get not just into Millbrae, but through Millbrae. And any modification you do to that is going to severely impact bikes, safety in the city of Millbrae, which already has a safety problem when it comes down to pedestrians. I don't think $10 million seems like it's going to fix the existing problem, let alone fix what problems you're going to create. That's it.
Thank you, Chris. Do you have a comment on the fields? Because that was one of my questions, too. Not because that, but since I was brought up.
Yeah, definitely. I also just wanted to clarify that I'm not actually the transportation consultant. So the transportation plan was not my creation. In terms of the parks, I think that I fully understand that you have a portion of a county park in your city limits. I believe you have school district lands that are very important. There's always a debate when you're setting a service standard on which to base a fee as to whether you get to count the school district, what is a partnership, whether you count the school district lands in your service standard or not, because you do not fully control them and fully own them. And there's certainly examples, and we've chosen to be more conservative here, but there are examples of cities that do not include them. There are examples of cities that do include them. There are examples of cities that discount them based on, the level of access to the public. So there's certainly ways to argue that you have a higher service standard. There are some. There are always opportunities for developers to challenge these things on the basis of, do you really control those lands? So some of it's about how conservative or aggressive you want to be in your policy setting. I think that's the service standard setting is a kind of linchpin of these fees. It's a service standard approach. The service standard you said is kind of driving this. I think the second part of it is that in terms of the idea that I think what we've done, a lot of cities just charge fees to residential development. Here we've charged it to residential and non-residential development. I think you'll find, I think we've taken an approach that it's possible to be more aggressive, but we've been pretty consistent with a lot of approaches in a lot of other cities in terms of that balance between distribution, between new employment and new residents. I think you'll find that your residential fees are kind of are on, even under this existing service standard on the high side. Obviously, we'll go higher with some of the changes you're suggesting. So I guess those are the two things I wanted to respond to. But I think there is, from my perspective, there's wiggle room here to increase the fee. I do also share the city attorney's, understanding that these fees would be, kind of higher than Palo Alto, higher than Redwood City, et cetera, et cetera. But obviously, that's not for me to decide.
Ann.
Again, trying to understand this. So the city, we didn't use the fact that the city pays for the maintenance of many of the school fields. We didn't use that in the calculation, or we did?
If I could,
I've got a couple to go along with that. So right now we're just talking about the elementary school in Taylor.
But again, it's not the maintenance, it's the use of the schools as a part of our park system. And so if you look at under the general plan, within the general plan, it defines city parks as 44 acres. And then within the general plan, it talks to, there's a definition when I say parks. So the definition in the general plan, and it says obtaining this standard in reality however, requires that outdoor recreation facilities at schools be made available to the public during non-school hours. So part of that is what he's speaking to is we have these leases with the school district, but we don't have full utilization of them. And that's part of the reason, and that's where it comes out of. We took this language out of the general plan in our application of the fees.
I'm looking right now at the general plan, and it says parks and open space make up 7.8%, which is 124.2 acres.
That's correct. It's in there, but then they qualify it on page 6.4 in that paragraph on the left-hand side.
Vice Mayor?
I'm sorry. So it sounds like yes, it was, and no, it wasn't. I'm still confused. It was not included. So that is a definite change that has to be done.
What was not included where?
The fact that we utilize school acreage, even in a part-time basis, wasn't part of the calculation in the fees. So the fees have to be adjusted then.
That would be a change on our part.
That would be, okay. So, number 2, when I was a young adult and I worked in Silicon Valley, I swam sometimes once, sometimes twice a day. We have no swimming pool, but we have a high school really close to these 2 TODs. So, can you do an estimate based on what it might cost to have a relationship with San Mateo Unified High School District for swimming pool access as one example, for field access? Because with a different hat, a non-city council hat, I know that the Lions would like to have greater field access for programs. I believe AYSO would like greater field access, but we don't have those fields. So how do you calculate that in here? And I'm not even talking about what people might like in the new community center. We're talking about what we might be able to get in the next 6 months through negotiation with existing school districts.
For development. These fees will be for development that we can go forward with the impact fees.
Yeah, but I'm trying to address the concerns that were brought up here that not enough was included in the fees, that we're missing some gaps. And I have to admit, when I look at the current general plan and I look at everything that was marked green, to me, it was comparing apples and oranges and watermelons and tobacco. I don't know. It was a bunch of different things.
So, council member, while I respectfully understand that all of those concerns have a place, but not with this document that we're talking about.
I guess that's what I don't understand. I don't see how I can approve them tonight because I don't quite understand what's going on.
These fees are for any new development. We're going to implement new fees to our city.
I hear you, but it's based on population numbers that now have to be adjusted and perhaps acreage numbers that have to be adjusted.
We approved that, as Gina has reminded us a few times tonight. We've already approved that.
So our hands are tied.
They're not tied. What we're doing now is we're putting some changes to the proposal of impact fees. So we can take the advice of staff and the professionals who took the different studies, because there's obviously, Janet pointed out some different numbers that are used. And in this case, we're on this subject right this moment, we're talking about parks. The proposal here by staff, the recommendation by staff, is it's parks, the land of parks. Though anybody that develops will pay based upon the land that we already have in parks. What the discussion is, if I'm wrong, council, let me know, is we did not include any of the school district. And Chris just brought up the point that we should include the school district, the fields and the uses that we use, and rec. So we can make a recommendation, like we took the recommendation. We could make the recommendation that we include that, so the fees for anybody that develops in our city goes up. Those fees come into our fund, and we can use those for our parks.
Okay, so we're talking 2 adjustments, population and acreage.
Correct.
Okay. Well, and not just acreage classrooms.
But it's nothing that's going to happen in 6 months, or a swimming pool, or any of that. It's completely different from that. Okay? Is it clear? I mean, I just want to make sure I'm saying it out loud to clarify that I'm on the right page too. All right, Vice Mayor.
I had a question regarding fields and potentially something like a pool. If those, the school district and the high school district will be imposing their own fees, their own development fees on this stationary plan as well. So as part of their fees, can they include field space as calculated into their fees based on the field space that is they currently have at the schools?
We don't know what their
We haven't discussed that with them.
Are basically set by statute, capped by law, so yeah, they can. If I could, I want to make a couple of clarifications. First of all, it's really important to understand these are infrastructure fees. These are development impact fees to provide infrastructure to deal with the impacts of the new development. And I understand Mr. Del Negro's explanation of all the needs in the city. This is not the way to meet your deficit. If the city feels like it has a deficit, if the city has a deficit in its existing facilities, this is not the way to meet that deficit. And I think it's really important to understand that it's not just any developers that may have already come to the city. The Building Industry Association watches these fees very closely, okay? And they send out Public Records Act requests to the city every so often to check on how these fees are being collected and how they're being used. I understand Millbrae is special. I understand we may want to maximize as much. I think the professionals that we've worked with have set that number as high as they felt, reasonable. The reason we do reasonable and not aggressive is reasonable is what holds up in court. And, there's many instances in which cities get aggressive and end up being challenged by developers who attack the basis. So we have an excellent consulting firm that's worked very hard to try to come up with a reasonable justification for these fees. We can talk about it if you want to send him back and have him look, can we adjust it somewhat? But I think it's important. I don't think we should ignore the fees in surrounding communities. We can't get too far ahead of them, otherwise I think you raise invisibility and subject yourself to challenge. So I just want you to understand that context. We can't make up the deficit. This is not to fix what the city has now. This is to address the impact of what this development causes, and it's infrastructure only, it's not services. It's what we can physically replace. It could be improvements, it could be, playground structures or other things. But I just think we need to, before we get our shopping list ready, we need to be somewhat clear because we don't want to get ourselves into a challenge.
Except for thank you for the clarification. I did hear the word a little wiggle worm.
I guess the the city attorney is, I think, laying out some important things to bear in mind, and I obviously defer to him on all issues, kind of legal and potential challenges. I think that I guess my point was that there are judgment calls within these assumptions, and there are different policy decisions and kind of tilts that the councils can go in, and in my mind, you will be pushing. You will definitely. All the changes we've spoken about have pushed the fee higher, and it sounds like some folks want it to be much higher than what is recommended in here. I don't know. As an economist, I am kind of aware that if the fees go very high, then at some point the development won't happen, at least for now. And if that's not, if the intent of the specific plan is to actually get these things built, there's kind of a balancing act there between wanting to make sure you get good funding for your improvements, but also having the development happen. And there's no magic answer like 18,000 is perfect or 22,000 or 16,000. There's no magic answer, but it's about being kind of roughly in the ballpark. And it is true if you look at most of the fees of your neighboring communities, recognizing that no two cities are the same, that this fee would be in the range at the high end. If we move back to the $48,000 per unit fee, it would be a kind of remarkably high fee, and that's just a point of information.
It's very difficult to compare city to city because there's so many different parks in one city comparably to parks in another city. Because when you do the research of comparing it, it would be nice if we could get like a bottom line figure to build a certain type of structure to the whole city, the net.
I'm sorry. One other point too is that these are. Again, we're looking at a project area. Other cities have impact fees, and it's citywide, and that's something that we're going to be coming forward with that, and hopefully we'll be further along with like the Parks and Rec master plan. But there's also that consideration with some of this is project specific for this 114 acres.
Because I have one question, and then Councilmember Pappen, I'll stop it. If we were to include the schools, is that too aggressive in your opinion?
I mean, I think. I guess the first thing is how we include the schools, and I think we just want to, make sure that we put the right allocation in there. And I'd have to look. I'd want to look at what other cities have done in terms of whether they include the full acres of the school district, even though there isn't. I don't think there's 24/7 access by city residents to it. So maybe a discount, just to see what would seem reasonable, and then. I know that you have a lot of school acreage that is available and that is used. So I imagine that would add quite substantially to the standard and therefore push up the fee quite high. And so, again, I think we're definitely getting into an area where development feasibility will be affected. Again, it's I think it's up to you all to weigh.
But I'm asking your professional opinion. Would it be too high?
I
guess if we're talking about,
I'd rather he not answer that question.
Yeah, and
because I just think if it's the council's decision to go further with a higher fee, I'd rather not have him on the record saying. I mean, I think he can take, if you want him to, he can take back and see what can be done. One thing I should just point out, and that is, if you look at this $50,000 figure, I mean, it may sound good if it's coming in, but you're basically adding that to the cost of an apartment or of a home. So when you sell someone who's, we have a housing crisis in this county, you're saying someone who's going to build or going to acquire or rent a home, that you've just added $50,000 to the price of that structure. It just doesn't seem like that's a reasonable amount based on what their impact is on on local parks. But I defer to the council's report.
Can I, please?
Your turn.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're trying to view this as being responsible to our community. So for your reference, we're not talking about entire school properties. We have an agreement with the school district regarding the fields, which I think it is only responsible for us to include in this analysis. So that's extremely important to us. Not the entire, where the buildings are or anything like that. We have an agreement that was many years ago, which Councilmember Holliber's mom and I served on the joint committee. We are partners in the fields at the schools. So I believe in order for us to be responsible, those have to be included in our analysis. And I also agree that, again, legal counsel here, we understand, but we have to be responsible. If we are calculating a number to base fees on, we need to include what we actually, our community recreation is, and that is a huge, significant part of the Millbrae community. So, I strongly believe that has to be included in our analysis, as well as being consistent. I don't think it's unreasonable, legally speaking, for us to be consistent with the number that's in the EIR. So it can be consistency throughout, I think, is reasonable, and I'd be curious to see what it comes up with if we're using that analysis. Please.
Yes. Councilmember Lee.
So we're going under the Parks Master Plan analysis. It seems to me like we're talking about what if and what can. It seems to me like we're kind of putting the cart before the horse, because we really don't know what our situation with our parks are and our need for recreation. So now we're pulling a number out of the hat, saying this is how much money we need, but we truly don't know how much money we need to accommodate.
Councilmember, Lee?
Let me also
Let me just
let me also add. Let me finish.
All right,
You're interrupting my thought.
focus.
Now I have to reach. Now I have to restart.
Brought us back to where these were. These are not for creating.
I understand that. You didn't let me finish.
All right,
I totally understand. It's not to make up the difference. It is not to try to enhance. Well, no, that's not true. It is to enhance because basically we're adding another, what number was it? 3,500 more people, 4,000 more people, and that's going to be an impact. And we are a unique city because we don't have much flat area here. We are mostly hills. So it's not like any other city. Of course, property is going to be more expensive. And of course, developing here is going to be more expensive. So yeah, I'm not trying to be unreasonable, but we have to be reasonable to our community. So I think that's what's been being said. I don't think our community is being unreasonable. So I'm thinking that it's the cost of business here, it's the cost of having to develop here. It's very expensive to develop here, and we're not trying to buy something using this as an excuse, but we definitely need to know what is the need for the current and the additional community. So my thing is we should do the park master plan first, get that out of the way, and then we can determine how much we're going to need to provide for these additional people. And that's what the impact fee's for, is for the additional people.
Okay, I have to respectfully disagree with you because we don't put impact fees into place to fix the parks and the recreation center. Impact fees are to put into place what it costs to develop in Millbrae, and we need to encourage people very, very carefully, and we will be aggressive with them. But we do want to encourage people to develop here so that we can have developments, to have infrastructure fees in place so that things that do deteriorate in our city we can fix.
No, we don't. Okay, right. But I never said anything about fixing. I only said about creating the facilities for the additional people. And in order to know that, we need to do the study of our parks and recreation as they exist now. What can it handle the existing population? Can it handle more population? And we don't know that because we haven't done the study.
I think if we come back, it sounds like we're going to come back with some hopefully clearer information. Hopefully somebody will tell us when this master plan is supposed to be done so we know where we're going here. But the idea, I'm sorry, Ed, you're basing a lot of this on November 2015 numbers, is that correct? Is that what I'm seeing here? As these numbers
The
keep
numbers
getting older
that
and older?
were calculated were in the feasibility study, and it was a cost per acre that is a standard cost for improvement of parks. That's how it was established under the feasibility study. So that came out to, it's like $360,000 an acre because you're talking about, active and passive parks as well. So that's the standard that was established for determining the numbers was what came out of the feasibility study and what's the standard cost for development of parks.
I like Councilmember Pappin's suggestion of just the fields to be included.
We have the leases for the fields, so we've evaluated those, and we can go back and we had a discussion about that, and and how we do it with the amount of time that the parks are available for use, and then coming up with a percentage.
Perfect.
That was something.
Is that a good consensus?
We can go back and do that because we do have all the leases already.
We have a good consensus here.
Okay.
Councilmember Lee.
No, I was going to recommend that we continue the hearing.
Pardon me?
Continue this hearing. Our next meeting.
Public hearing's still open.
Yes. You want to continue? You want to close it?
No, because we close it, then we're going to have to vote. So I'm just saying, I agree to continue the hearing.
Chris?
It's what's identified in.
Chris, the audience at home likes to hear your wise words, so I'll try to say. We're also, the chairman of the Recreation Commission, Dr. Chris Denegro, said that we also should include the gymnasiums as well in our calculations, because our recreation department uses those, rents those facilities.
We do not have leases for those, I heard, that we do not rent those.
The Vice?
Yes.
And I'd also just like to confirm that we have consensus on using the standard of 2.65 people per unit for residential.
Correct.
Okay.
Can we shift gears to transportation for a moment, please? The impact fees related to, what's this section? I want to get it correct here. Roy, in the, is it the transportation section, or do we call this a specific? And I
Under
still
the
can't.
feasibility study?
Yeah, I still can't find it in here.
You can't find.
It's not in mine, that one.
Woman Pappen, while you're looking, can I ask a couple of things? Sure. If this hearing is going to be continued for 2 weeks, when we went through the specific plan, Christy, you prepared a number of FAQs. There were a lot of questions tonight. Do you think it would be reasonable in 2 weeks or in the time for the agenda packet to answer some of the questions that came up today, like the difference between the two codes, some of the other, if I go through my notes, I can find a bunch of questions. Some I shared, some I've had the advantage of a little bit more counseling from you and other staff members. But if we're continuing anyway, can we get that FAQ?
We can infill it with the addressing the other questions in the staff report.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, I'm on the transportation impact fee program. Please.
You're in the feasibility study?
I'm in whatever was tonight.
It's blue. Okay.
Sorry, I don't know what page it looks like this.
Yes, that's the feasibility study.
Right. Oh, excuse me. Thank you very much. All the terminology. In here, I'm sorry if you could direct my attention to, oh, it says here, and I'm looking at page 6 of this feasibility study, provide an appropriate amount of vehicle parking, all this, this access plan material, I think the greatest reflection for any traffic issues we have in this specific feasibility study is going to be revealed in what we have identified as an access plan here. So I'm extremely interested in that because I think that is going to reflect how Millbrae will be, what this fee will do to assist Millbrae in evaluating the traffic impact. So I like the way this is done, but I just didn't understand the priority. When you're talking about this feasibility study, you've listed a lot of different programs. So when a fee comes in, can we prioritize how
Absolutely.
We can.
And that's on an annual basis under the capital improvement program. The capital improvement program will be identifying each of those as projects. So, and also it will identify that there's different funding sources. So as the council, you would be prioritizing the timing for those. And a lot of it has to do also with the funding and having the money to do the projects as well. So, but we have abilities to kind of move things around according to but that's how it's done, is the council does prioritize the projects.
And I think this council has already really emphasized since we've included it in our current budget, as to getting that accomplished as soon as possible, because it is an extreme concern for many of us.
And that's what we're working on right now.
Thank you.
So that's not part of any of the amending titles, part of this ordinance, though. It's in there. But it's a study in there.
The what? The comprehensive plan?
Yeah, it's
in here.
Yes. So based upon our conversation tonight, is there any more public comment? Can we close?
I would suggest you continue it. I just want to make a comment. The first reading of the ordinance references a dated report from the consultant. So if we're going to have the consultant revise that report, then I don't think we should proceed with the first reading of the ordinance, because I think it's our intention to.
Okay, so how do I do that?
Just continue the
I think
hearing.
we just continue the item.
Yeah.
Is 2 weeks enough?
No.
So a month?
we'll let you guys decide.
Yes.
A month isn't enough?
I think a month to get a final report. We can talk about whether we would come back with an interim. We may come back and give you some calculations. I strongly want to look at the other cities. Now, let me just, one final comment on the other cities. Not every city has updated their fees, so it's not unusual to be higher than other cities, but, you know, double is, I think, is a problem. So.
Yeah, so, well, we don't know if
That's,
we
we're
don't
going to
know
look
what
at
the
those.
fees are
Right.
until we
So
look at
I
them.
think we do need to be cognizant of that. But I think, you know, certainly he can take a look. I think the suggestions are reasonable. He can look at those and see how the numbers come out, and then we can decide from there, so.
Is everybody good with that? Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Good, thank you.
All righty, so can I just go straight to existing business? Commissions, committees, restructuring, follow-up discussion. Is Deborah here? Do we have a report?
Yes, Deborah Nelson will present this report.
Can we just take a
Was
few minute
there?
break? She just stepped out for a minute. Should we just take a few minutes break?
Well, let's see if we can get her. There's no sense taking a recess. We're on home stretch. It was very interesting. Sorry, MCTV. Can we do that? Can we do council comments? No, here she comes. Don't be sorry. Thank you, Deborah.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members, and also good evening to the City Committee members and commissioners who are in the audience. And tonight, following a review of the committee and commission structure, including input from 2 council subcommittees and from meetings with committees and commissions, staff is presenting its professional recommendation to you tonight. Tonight's meeting is for discussion of an entire packet of materials, not unlike the discussion you just completed. A first reading of an ordinance amending Title II of the Municipal Code regarding commissions, and at a subsequent meeting, the council will be asked to adopt the ordinance, adopt resolutions for committees, make 4 motions regarding policies and procedures, work programs, and bylaws. Taken together, the recommended actions result in a focus on aligning the city's committees and commissions on the needs in the community and to the City Council priorities. Every year, the City Council sets goals to be accomplished in the upcoming fiscal year. These goals are translated into work programs in various city departments and are reflected in the city budget and the capital improvement program. In this light, the review of committees and commissions has included consideration of how the City Council goals translate into efforts in which your community volunteers, and there are some 80 of them, can participate. There's a focus on actionable items for the committees and commissions to work on. In addition, work programs also reflect the quality of life measures that many of your commissions and committees perform as they address specific segments of the community. By putting focus on action in addition to updates provided to and by committees and commissions, these groups can help the City Council achieve its goals. This year, during May, June, and July, meetings were held to receive input from committees and commissions. The report tonight represents staff's professional recommendation based on our experience and input during the process. However, there are some alternatives presented where there were varying inputs. As we proceed with this discussion, the council subcommittee members, Lee and Schneider, may wish to also assist in the presentation. So I'd like to focus on, I see I had some typos on page 3, but on a summary of what the recommendations are, which begin on page 3. 3 commissions are proposed, and these are based on other legal authority other than Title II of your municipal code. So the two commissions, Planning Commission and Park and Recreation Commission, are bodies that are authorized in the state code, planning and zoning law. And the Sister Cities Commission is a body that retains membership in Sister City International. So you would go to 3 commissions. 2 new committees are proposed, which align the City Council priorities to your adopted mission, and the 2 new committees would be Community Enhancement Advisory Committee and Economic Vitality Advisory Committee. And the goals and purposes of these 2 committees would be to reflect ongoing emphasis on alignment to the needs of city of Millbrae, and as such needs change over time. In other words, these have broad names and they have broad assignments. So later I'll go over the work plans suggested for these 2 committees, but this year it's focused on your goals and priorities that you want to achieve. There was discussion in the council, your current council subcommittee, members Lee and Schneider, regarding an infrastructure, environment, and safety committee. Staff did review this in June with the whole council. We did not hear that there was a majority interest in creating that, so we haven't presented that tonight. It was some work on the part of the city attorney's office to prepare additional documents, and so we would like to hear your interest in creating that new committee and direct us to analyze the costs, the rules, and the tasks that you would want that committee to achieve. In other words, what are the outcomes for that committee in terms of actionable items that relate to your goals and policies. The third suggestion is that you adopt common rules and procedures regarding members, length of term, removal from office, vacancies, duties, work plans, and expenses. You'll note in the ordinance for commissions that it looks very similar to the resolutions for committees. So we've created a consistent package of information so everyone's treated pretty much the same and what their rules and duties are. There's also some changes recommended in terms of numbers of active members in those committees and commissions, and those were based on input from these meetings with those committees and commissions in May, June, and July. You would consider a motion at your next meeting on this item to rescind policies and guidelines which were adopted in 2009, and that kind of describes what the council will do. Those are now incorporated in the ordinance and the resolutions. So we would ask for a motion. The one place that is different is that there is also a recommendation for how you interview, and that really would be reflected in your practice and who you appoint to subcommittees for interviews. Also in this regard, there is a suggestion for quarterly meetings. Many of the committees and commissions, or at least one, meets quarterly right now, a committee. And when we did a survey of holidays, work plans, and other schedules, found that some committees meet 6 or 8 times a year. The suggestion is quarterly, and in as each committee and commission considers its work plan for the upcoming fiscal year, they could adopt a schedule that's more aggressive to such that they get the work done that they have committed to do. An alternative is bi-monthly meetings. I just want to use for an example, the Community Preservation Commission is going to have a special meeting coming up on September 24th. So there's still the possibility to do that within our structure. Community Preservation Commission goes to Orchard Supply Hardware and does a succulent workshop. They've done this for a number of years. We as a city advertise that as a special meeting so that they're covered under the Brown Act. The fourth recommendation, and this is represented primarily in the resolutions, is that there's liaison relationships between committees and between the community. So the Senior Advisory Committee and Youth Advisory Committee duties require relationships with Community Enhancement and Park and Recreation. The Community Enhancement Advisory Committee also serves as a liaison to residents and schools and businesses. And the Economic Vitality Committee duties would require relationships with other city commissions, the Chamber of Commerce, the Visitors and Convention Bureau, and other business associations such as the Chinese Business Association. The annual work programs allow for appointment of subcommittees, and I know this has come up recently with the Park and Recreation Commission regarding the rebuild of the community center. Certainly within this structure, any commission or committee, if they are assigned a very comprehensive work program item from the City Council, such as rebuild as a community center, they could establish an ad hoc advisory committee that could serve with voting rights to advise them. And so that structure doesn't have to be codified, but it could be a method that those committees and commissions use. There was discussion about term limits. The proposal is only require term limits for Parks and Recreation and Planning Commission, and that would be 3 4-year terms. There are no term limits for any commission or committee now. And that's primarily because of their quasi-judicial nature. And also with that, in companion with that, is that former city council members would need to wait 2 years from expiration of their term before appointment on one of these two commissions. Another alternative would be not to do that at all or require this term limits for all bodies. The sixth is to change some of the language in the committee and commission structure so that only the Planning Commission and Parks and Rec Commission need to be qualified electors of the city. Every other committee or commission would only require residency, except Youth Advisory Committee already. It just requires that they attend a Millbrae school. And Economic Vitality Commission would be some relationship to a business within the community, but the person doesn't necessarily have to live here. The seventh recommendation is, as I mentioned before, that the city council, full city council interview everybody. You only do that now for the Planning Commission. There was interest in the subcommittee's part to have the full city council interview for all committees and commissions rather than do that by subcommittee. And then the eighth recommendation is regarding if you move forward with this, adopt work programs, which could be altered once the new committees are in place if you go that direction, but such that we have work programs already in place for recruiting purposes for the Community Enhancement Advisory Committee and the Economic Vitality Advisory Committee. And then also a common template of bylaws. The Planning Commission adopts these regularly. The City Attorney's Office helped us do those a number of years ago. That concludes my presentation for now, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions?
Or have the subcommittee members give a report as well.
Part of my problem is that this was 10 separate documents. So to me, that's difficult to know which document we might be referencing. So if there's agreement on the council, and as a member of the subcommittee, I can start with the staff memo and make a few modifications, or at least my interpretation of what happened. But there are actually edits or things throughout all of the other 9 documents that are very specific. So I don't know how to handle this.
Go for it.
Okay. All right, I'm just going to go down through the pages on here. I apologize for the public. The subcommittee, we did meet once. Wayne and I met once. I did attend all but the Community Preservation Commission and one of the other commission, Cultural Arts, that can't meet because they don't have quorum, which they are affected tonight. And Deborah, would you know if all of the committees and commissioners were invited tonight?
Yes, they were.
They were invited. Were they invited by letter or by phone call?
They were invited by email.
Okay. So part of the problem with Cultural Arts is because we don't have a quorum, they can't meet. Because there's no quorum, I can't meet with them. Therefore, their concerns are not necessarily represented in this information. I do know they all would love to continue serving in some capacity, but because of that quorum problem, it created a catch-22, which was really unpleasant. Okay. In terms of the general Planning and Park and Rec, there was a third alternate that didn't quite get in here, and I don't know, since we have the chair of the Park and Rec Commission, if he would like to speak. If not, I can mention what you and I spoke about or what was discussed at the last Park and Rec Commission in terms of the structure of the committee. It's up to you. Okay, then we'll come back to that.
Councilmember Schneider, could I ask for your recommendations?
I'm on summary page number 3. And I am advocating for the creation of an infrastructure, environment, and safety committee, which is in alignment with 3 of our city goals, both the infrastructure, develop the cost structure, and a process for assessing infrastructure costs, safety, which to me includes road safety, pedestrian safety, it includes fire safety, all of us being prepared for the next natural disaster. It includes sea level rise and flooding. And then the third part of that under the general plan is the creation of our first climate action plan, which is environment. This is somewhat confusing because when you read through the documents for the Community Enhancement Advisory Committee, it mentions a number of environmental attributes, especially when in terms of water conservation. So there is some overlap there that can cause confusion. So I am advocating for the creation of that committee. I think it would work well with the length of time it took the public to get a response back on the burglaries. Speaking from my neighborhood, the years that we have been asking for traffic calming measures and things like that. So that's why I'm advocating for that. Now, specifically, in terms of alternative or item number 4, Deborah, we did talk about Sister City wanting to liaison, and they specifically want a liaison with economic vitality and tourism, especially because of the public events that they do. I do not recall saying that council members had to sit out 2 years. I am open to where the council is leaning on that. I don't have an opinion strongly one way or the other on that. I do support strongly that we interview everybody and that it's not a subcommittee that interviews people. Millbrae is a small town. It has its cliques. And I think when you have a 2-person committee, you continue the cliques into the membership of the committees and commissions. On number 8, where it says Park and Recreation Commission work plan was adopted, I could be wrong, but I thought staff was going to draft it, but I didn't know it was adopted because I don't recall looking at it. And the reason I'm bringing that up is it was I'm a member of the county bicycle and pedestrian committee, and starting in January, I asked to bring this up as an informational issue to council. It was put off or not brought up. And then I was told at the Park and Rec meeting in May that, bicycle and pedestrian is a subset of Park and Rec. That's fine. My one concern is that Park and Rec is going to be very, very busy with the community center rebuild. And I don't want to overly stress the committee on that one. But for us to qualify for some of these grant funds, we have to have, in some form, a bicycle and pedestrian committee. Without it, we cannot apply for the grants. So it needs to be clear in the documents wherever bike and pedestrian could be. If it stays, Christopher, we're lucky that our chair is an avid cyclist. He comes in with his Bianchi bicycle shirt today as proof. So it could very well be excellent staying in Park and Recreation. It would also fit under infrastructure, because part of what we need to do on El Camino and Millbrae Avenue and California isn't make it safe for pedestrians and cyclists. So it could go either way in there. The final, well, there's not a final. Under economic vitality, the way the document reads, it sounds like all members of the Economic Vitality Committee must be in agreement with doing a business improvement district. And I can't remember if the council or previous councils has voted that that is where we're going. I'm not giving an opinion one way or the other. I just don't know where we stand on having a BID, and if that becomes a litmus test for who would ever serve on the Economic Vitality Advisory Committee. In some of the documents, it says that the committees like cultural arts, I don't have that particular document in me, but it's outdated or unneeded, and that wasn't the case. The problem with cultural arts was a lack of quorum. Potentially one of the lack of quorum was a lack of having anything real to do. So some of the verbiage in the other documents I think is a little harsh. And in terms of the quarterly meetings, my recollection of meeting with a number of the committees and commissions was none of them were in favor of quarterly meetings. They were in favor of 6 to 8 or 8 to 10 with specific months already pre-designated or possibly pre-designated as taking off, like the month of August or the month of December, but not that any of them were happy with quarterly. My concern with designating a committee or commission as quarterly is you're setting expectations of who might apply for that committee, and they think, heck, it's only 4 times a year, no big deal, and suddenly they find out they're meeting 8 to 10 times a year. So I would rather see language that says 6 to 8 or 8 to 10 and at least quarterly. And at least in terms of the staff report, those are my comments.
Okay, Councilmember Lee, can we have your staff report? You're the subcommittee.
Thank you, Councilwoman Schneider, for your comments. I think there was also a discussion about the makeup of the commissions and committees, and there was some discussion about adding particularly interested, reflecting part of the community. For instance, in Recreation Commission, we should have some young people there who are impacted by the recreation program. So a person from one of the middle school, a person from the high school, for instance, should be comprised on a commission. The question is, do they have voting rights or not? I kind of lean towards voting rights. Otherwise, it gives them more skin in the game. And the same thing goes for the Economic Vitality Advisory Committee. It seems that it makes sense to have business people there on a committee than just residents, because so I recommend at least 6 business people and 3 residents be on that committee. I didn't come to a consensus about, given my experience with. This is my own comment. Given my own experience about interviewing, we have difficulties getting people on some of these committees and commissions. So normally when we have these interviews, they're morely just, this is what's going to happen. This is how many meetings you're going to be expected to go to. This is how, we just give them pretty much an orientation, basically. And Vice Mayor Hollenberg and Ad, we've been interviewing the last few years. So I don't see, it'd be great if we had a groundswell of applications, but we don't. And occasionally we do on the Planning Commission. So we have difficulties at some time just getting people on our Recreation Commission, which surprises me, but I don't think that's going to be the case the next few years. So there also was a discussion of how big do they want. They've had problems with quorums with the Recreation Commission. So they felt that what's more important is they want to make sure they had really engaged people who were on a commission. So the question was, do we want to have 5 really good engaged people or 7? I am in favor of having 7 with 1 student from each school. That's my preference. Let's see, I had a few other things. Why don't we just take questions for now?
What was
Yes.
I get what you guys were doing, your opinions right now, but I thought the subcommittee was going to get the opinions of the committees. So I'm a little confused when it says the recommendation that the city council consider the city council subcommittee and staff recommendations, but you guys are both changing the recommendations. Like right here it says for Planning Commission, Parks and Recs Commission to 5. So you're suggesting we change that now?
Can I explain?
Well, wait, I have a question. I'm asking.
I think that was you're asking for a report, and that's what I was giving you is my report on what transpired, and adding to Councilman Snyder's and staff. And thank you, staff, for doing this. Was a really tough project. Shouldn't have been so tough, but it was really tough, and that meant a lot of meetings. And we tried to capture. It was really important to me that we capture as much comment from our commission and committees as possible.
Park and Rec already suggested that themselves. Am I correct? They're here. Please, why don't you?
Well, but can I give one clarification? At the August Park and Rec meeting, both Councilman Lee and I were there. The decision to go to 5 was prior to the community center fire. So at the August meeting, I specifically asked the commission, are they comfortable staying at 5? Do they feel that they can handle the workload with the community center at 5? And now, Commissioner Chair Del Negro, is it Dr. Del Negro? I'm sorry. My apologies, Dr. Del Negro. He can explain what we kind of tried to brainstorm at that meeting that would provide them the resources that they need with the community center.
And I'm sorry, before you speak, may I ask the context with that this came up? We advertised an agenda item for the committee and commission discussion in May, June, and July. And all the committees and commissions had that conversation and gave us input. So I wasn't at the August meeting of the Park and Rec Commission. I do know that they discussed and adopted their work program, which included the active transportation plan as it relates to the general plan, the community center, and the parks master plan, and the things that they do year in and year out, which is do recreation programs and fees, and those recommendations to the city council.
With all respect, though, I did send you a follow-up email following the August Park and Rec meeting with what we had decided, and Councilman Lee did comment on that. And then I believe the acting city manager also commented, and it was my understanding that it would have been added into this report. It just didn't get in there.
Yes.
So at our last Parks and Recreation Commission, we did have a discussion based on the size. Yes, we have had issues in the past with a quorum of 7. We do anticipate an increased workload. That is a concern of ours in going forward. However, meeting a quorum was more important to us than anything else. We would prefer to have a quorum of 5. I've talked to 4 out of 5 of the commissioners. Do agree with that. Actually, one was not reachable.
A membership of 5?
4 out of 5 of the current commissioners agree with a group of 5, but we did not have a formal vote on record.
Oh, that's all right. We didn't have votes. We just had discussion with everybody.
That being said, on our commission list that I recently looked at the website, there is one commissioner missing, which is Dan Quigg is missing off that list.
So you're happy?
We're happy with a group of 5. We have, however, asked to have some representation from our seniors in our committee and also some representation from the youth in our community for the commission. We do not necessarily require that they're voting. That may make it difficult for us to get a quorum again, especially during holidays and things like that and summer breaks. However, we would like to see at least some ad hoc representation being condoned to the group. We would prefer to see 2 youths and at least somebody from the senior advisory committee, possibly as an ad hoc member, come in and give input at least as an advisor. We would appreciate that input, especially as we go forward to building a community center that's going to have a youth center and a senior center as part of the makeup.
Understood. Perfect. Gina.
Okay. We really need to get moving on this. So since you've just spoken about Park and Rec, I wish we could just confirm at least one group here as to what Park and Rec has suggested and be done with that also and simultaneously reappointing everyone, right? Do we need to do that as well?
No.
Because our appointment's pending?
No.
Yeah.
Not right now.
Yeah. Well, there are a number of right. Right.
So tonight?
Expired.
Yes.
Well, what? I just want to.
No, that's in the next step as a process to invite. Once you decide the new structure, everybody gets invited to reapply either for their existing commission or committee or the new committees that get created.
Okay. I like where. Yes.
Okay, I disagree with the term limit issue, period. And I'd also like to disagree with this council member appointment thing. That's my opinion. Can we get some consensus on that?
I like the way you were starting this whole. We'll take that question. We'll answer that question one second.
If it starts now, or if it starts backdated.
I think it's going to go away in a second. But
I think it's a great idea to handle one at a time, and Park and Rec is critical. So let's go for it.
I think we have some preliminaries here. First off,
wait a second here.
So
what we're going to do is we're going to say, look at the membership proposed. Let's start with membership, because I think that everybody had an opportunity to visit. At least everybody on this council visited each assigned committee. So let's take the first 2, Planning Commission and Parks and Rec Commission. The consensus, we can't vote. We're just getting a consensus here for 5 members. Is everybody good with that?
Yes.
All right, we have 2, 3. Sister Cities Commission, 11. Who went to Sister Cities Commission?
When I met with the Sister City Commission, they were pretty adamant at keeping their size because of the types of projects that they do, and whichever the number that Deborah has in the report, that was the size that they were happy with.
All right.
And the reason was also that they develop long-term relationships with the other sister cities, and if they have turnover.
Do we have a consensus on the 11?
Yes.
2, 3.
Yes.
Senior Advisory
Are we voting?
Committee.
We're just going to
Okay.
Not a vote.
Oh, okay.
We're talking. Senior Advisory Committee, 7. I went to that committee meeting. They are happy with even less.
7 was what they suggest.
Perfect. I'll
7.
take it. 7, 2, 3. Youth Advisory Committee.
wait. So if there are they 7 people attending, what's their roster now? Is it 7 people?
It's 11.
No,
Roster.
Senior?
Oh, how many are participating
Who are
now?
active? Because if that's the case, who are we going to kick off the senior committee?
Well, they're just not.
We just let it lapse.
They have trouble with quorum as it is now.
What they reported to us that attended that meeting was that there are folks represented in the roster who have since resigned or unable to participate. And then they counted on their fingers and they said 7.
Okay.
I was there for that meeting.
Okay. Consensus.
All right. Youth Advisory, 5, which means they need 3/4 quorum, which is pretty typical.
Yes.
1, 2, 3. Community Enhancement Advisory Committee, 9.
No.
Okay, speak.
Okay, the committee has never agreed to this consolidation type of thing. You're going to limit a committee that is active and has a quorum on a normal basis. So to increase their membership to 9 just because of a consolidation and the
Well, they have
consolidated-
8 now. So this increases it by 1.
That means they need 2 from
I don't think they've ever had, they're right there.
Well, they are the Community Preservation Commission. This is a Community Enhancement Committee. It would assume that the folks on community preservation will still be interested because the work program looks somewhat the same, though it is expanded. We did have a meeting this summer on the downtown enhancements. There's a suggestion that they also do water-wise and beautification awards for businesses, and expand to some of these environmental programs.
That has
so,
been their idea.
Suggesting
and then,
what do you guys want?
well, they gave us a list at the meeting that we had with them.
Go ahead. One of the issues.
Gail, I'm sorry, could you come up to the microphone for the audience at home?
Sorry. One of the issues that we had was the rolling of the Arts Commission into a meeting with us, because these people, as far as we know, have not been active. We have had most all the time, we have an active group with a quorum who meets on a regular basis, except for the last few months.
How many in that, please?
What's your current membership?
I think it's, is it 8? And we have 1 vacancy.
So you want to make it 8 or 9?
Well, we have 2 people who are very interested in joining the commission.
Let's just make it 9 then.
So we
need to be done here.
Okay, so we have 1, 2.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you also support the transition from the Community Preservation Commission into the Community Enhancement Advisory Committee?
I don't understand why I have been on a city commission so long. We were a beautification committee. We went to a commission. Now we're back to a committee. I don't understand what difference it makes.
I think you guys came up with a new name. Is that correct?
But a committee versus commission, what's the difference? We just want to get things settled so that we can get back to work.
Okay. All right, we'll leave you as a commission then.
We have 2 of us, but we need a third person to say okay on 9.
Okay to what?
9.
9.
Oh, yeah.
Community Enhancement Advisory Commission.
Okay, just to help the committee,
5.
5. So
the Cultural Arts Commission, I've spoken to each one individually. They would have been happy to have been meeting all this time, but because their membership was greater than 4 of them, they never made quorum, so they couldn't meet. So the city automatically canceled their meetings for them, and they could not meet. But all 3 are very happy to serve, and this is, again, where I differ in the staff report. It was not my understanding that everybody had to reapply for every committee and commission. I thought we were folding people in and then as terms went. But I'll leave that up to the rest of the council. But Cultural Arts has not been treated well by the city by not allowing them to meet because we didn't assign 1 more person to them so they could meet. So they've been caught in this trap. I think they will show to your meetings.
Okay, they have been invited to several of the meetings already and have not showed up. So we're trying to get this done here.
Right, Ruben.
Right.
I have a suggestion. If the Community Preservation / Enhancement Committee is not interested in incorporating arts as part of the committee work plan, would it make sense to perhaps keep the Cultural Arts Commission but reduce its membership to, say, 5 members so that 3 out of 5 could meet? And therefore they can keep the arts focus and keep that separate from the
So if
Community
you
Enhancement
agree
Committee.
with the recommendation that you only have commissions that have another body of law around them, they would become a committee, and their numbers could be reduced. And you might say that they meet at least annually, because part of the reason they don't meet is there's no art programming or art installation that has come before them.
Okay.
So
bring that up.
This is part of the reason why it was suggested to be in a broader committee of Community Enhancement Advisory Committee, and that resolution describes that at such time as there is art programming or art installation, that committee could decide or make recommendations to your council. They could create a subcommittee to work on that. It could be that some of the folks that have been in Cultural Arts Commission would like to join the new committee. At least one expressed to me that he would have interest in doing that. So,
You're watching MCTV, Millbrae Community Television, Comcast Channel 27, AT&T UVerse Channel 99, and streaming live at www.mctv.tv. You're watching MCTV, Millbrae Community Television, Comcast Channel 27, AT&T UVerse Channel 99, and streaming live at www.mctv.tv.
You're watching MCTV, Millbrae Community Television, Cable Channel 27.
sure that, I know Councilmember Lee suggested having senior and youth representatives at the Parks and Recreation Commission, and I think a liaison would be a good way of doing that, as opposed to requiring a voting member to be a youth voting member and a senior voting member.
Right.
So I would, just make sure that that is
So
included.
currently, the resolution just says liaison. We could specify in the resolution a middle school, and so that there are two, a middle school or
Two
a
youth
high school.
and one senior liaison.
Yeah.
Senior advisory committee liaison.
Yes.
Perfect. Yes?
Yes, yes.
Chair Del Negro, you had talked about a process that the city used to use, which was a junior and a senior, and it would be a 2-year term for the junior. It would take a year to rotate it in, but then you've got trained high school students looking at the structure of park and recreation programs for youth. This is the time.
Well,
I would suggest we bring this back because a couple of years ago you reduced the youth committee from 21 to 5. So I think we need to have a conversation about their availability.
We're just agreeing upon liaisons. We'll let the committee decide how.
Well, but this is a request for the structure of the Park and Recreation Commission. They were not liaisons from YAC. They were standalone youth that would come in and provide guidance in the recreation of the community center.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Well, and so for the community center work program, as I mentioned before, there could be an ad hoc committee specifically stating who those youth would be. They wouldn't have to be YAC. They could be community members at
And the
large that are
subcommittee will
youth.
gladly work with the Park and Rec Committee.
Right.
Okay. Term limits.
No.
I'm in favor for term limits for the Planning Commission, but not for any other commission or committees.
I agree with Councilmember Lee.
I agree with the Planning Commission, and I can understand the need for Parks and Recreation Commission as well, as a quasi-judicial body. But I do not believe term limits are necessary for any other committees.
So you're for planning and rec?
I'm
Yes.
planning in Park and Rec, term
I would
limits.
agree. So there's 3.
And as for former council members?
No.
No.
Okay. I would agree with a 2.
Okay.
You're the deciding vote.
Yes. I mean, I'll agree.
We have a comment.
We
Sorry.
voted no
You voted no for.
Yeah, I voted no.
for limiting council members, period. So you're the vote.
This is to waive the first reading.
We're doing informal votes to come up with the final
So we can
document that we can eventually have a final vote on.
Kind of an odd way to do it, but there's a lot, so
There's
hopefully
a lot
it's
of
legal.
little parts to it.
All right, did you decide?
All
What
right,
did we decide?
arrange-
Term limits for the 2 committees or council
We're having
members?
we have full term limits for both planning and rec.
I'm sorry, I meant the city council members that.
And a 2-year waiting period for city council members to join planning and park and rec, but not any other committee or commissions.
Okay.
Question about term limits, please, and that is that if you are, for example, on the Planning Commission, term limits, how are you going to do that? Are you going to have like 3 new people at once and then 2 new people at once, or do you start every
Stagger it, I
now
guess.
and then you have 5 new people at once?
No, it's
think
written into the ordinance, and it's still, as their term comes up, and it's the way it's written in the ordinance, and I can follow up with you later, is it's still the way it's been
It's only applied
previously.
It only applies to Park and Rec and Planning.
But
And-
continuity on the Planning Commission, because
It's important.
very important.
In the 12 years, it'd be starting now.
Yes.
So,
Let me confirm that, and I'll
It's not
bring that back.
ex
for
post
sure.
facto.
Okay.
Okay, can I,
Yes.
and can we please include Pike and Pedestrian and Park and Rec?
Yes, so in looking at this ordinance, maybe the paragraph regarding duties got left out. So the duties are in the municipal code now. I will bring them back forward, and I will add that they are the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee as such time as those issues need to be addressed.
Perfect.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay.
The YAC should also have a reference to safe routes to schools.
The Youth Advisory Committee?
Safe routes to schools, children getting to school safely.
In which case, if they're already liaisoning with Park and Rec, it should work fine.
Okay, number 6, residency for members for the Sister City Commission, the Senior Advisory, and the Community Enhancement Advisory Committee. Youth Advisory Committee members must be residents of the city but need not attend Millbrae School.
I'm agree with that.
Agreed.
I would agree with the alternative that require members of the Senior Advisory and the Community Enhancement Advisory Committee to also be qualified electors, but not sister cities or Youth Advisory, of course.
Agreed. 3.
There you go.
So we'll have 2 committees. This is just going really fast here. 2 committees will not have citizenship requirements. That would be Sister City and Youth?
And also economic fatality, since some of those.
So 3 committees wouldn't require citizenship,
Correct.
just to make it clear.
Agreed.
Yes.
Arrange for the full city council to conduct all interviews.
No.
No. So no. Practice full city council. Okay.
I have a question. The alternative would also be for Parks and Recreation, or are we just saying no?
No.
No.
So only planning?
Only planning.
Like-
Planning's the only commission that requires all of us to.
I'm okay with that, yeah.
Okay, Park and Rec is going to be doing significant work on the community center. You don't think that everyone should be reviewed or interviewed by the full council?
They get approved by the full council, so they have to. All committees and commissions, they have to be approved by the.
Okay, it hasn't happened in my time on council. Only the one position on planning has come before me. So
I think the interviews were done by the subcommittee and then presented to the council as a whole. I believe that's the.
That's right. That's the way. And then
Has occurred.
we as a council decide if we want to accept the subcommittee's recommendations or not.
Right. Okay, last one. Utilize a common template for the work plans by the bylaws for each committee and commission. The Planning Commission work plan was adopted in July of 2016. Parks and Recs Commission work plan was adopted in August 2016. As a rule, do I have to read this to you guys?
No.
All right.
No, so there, in your packet is attachments for the next meeting, because that's when you would do resolutions, are work plans for community enhancement and economic vitality advisory committee.
So the problem I have, since I have a Park and Rec commissioner here, is I haven't seen that work plan. That wasn't my understanding, and I don't know if bike and pedestrian is in there. So if it
Yes.
isn't, could you please amend it?
It is in there. The work plan includes the things that they do all of the time, fees and park programs. It includes on your council objectives for this year, the Parks Master Plan, the General Plan, which includes the Active Transportation Plan, where they will act as the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and related to your objectives, the rebuild of the community center. So all of those are in their work plan.
Okay, so our next step is to waive the first reading of this.
No, wait a minute. There was one other thing. I would say no on this addition of a climate action committee.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you
Climate
mean
Action
infrastructure?
Or whatever was suggested for the additional committee.
No, for me either. No more committees. We need to get these rolling.
Okay.
Okay, the other one I have, one thing we didn't mention is rotation of the chairs. Some of the commissions are not rotating their chairs.
I think that's up to them.
No, I think we should
They
enforce
have
it.
an election every year.
But they don't.
But wait, that's okay.
I don't
They
think
can
you
do
need
that,
to force
but we don't
rotation.
have to do that now. That's part of writing the committee work plan. Yeah.
It should be part of the bylaws, I think, because if you don't rotate the leadership, you don't get new ideas and new.
Well, some committees, it's difficult to get a leader. And so I think we should leave it up to the committees as to who they would like to be their chair. Gail has served for many years as the, I just think you need to give them that leeway.
Well, okay, I'll give them 2 years then. 2-year max.
Well, we could
Let them
say,
And then
we could
rotate.
say in the bylaws for each committee and commission that they do have a vote about chair and vice chair every May or June, and that committee or commission could decide that they don't want to rotate, because then the senior advisory committee told us the same thing, that there are some who like to come to the meeting and there are some who like to run the meeting. So Planning Commission and Park and Rec Commission, you probably want them to rotate.
That's what I was going to say. I'd like to require those two, and I know they already are rotating, but I'd like to make sure that those two commissions are required to rotate, but not the others.
Agreed.
Yeah, you got 3.
Yep.
Yes, thank you very much. The Community Preservation Commission had always had a planning meeting in July and always elected a chairman and co-chairman at that point. And sometimes, for many years, it would be the same person because they'd done a good job. They were happy in the job, and we were happy having them because
we just decided you can do
that. Now, I do have another question, and after this question, you may decide that I need to go home and you want to throw me off this commission. But I'd like to know how much money has been spent on this entire process for months of meetings and lawyers having to redraw papers and subcommittees and all of that, the dollar amount that the City Council has spent on the reorganization of all of these commissions, because to me it feels like a waste of time and money.
You know, we started this process a year ago. I was on with Councilmember Colapietro, and there were no quorums in any committees.
Disagreed.
And that's where it came about. The one thing that did come about was when we got to talk to your committee. So just because you were not the dysfunct in the funk, it needed to get addressed. So I think it was valuable time spent. As far as dollar amounts, I have no idea, but we have very capable staff. So whatever it cost, I will say thank you very much. You were worth every penny that we spent.
Thank you.
Okay. Now what?
I just conferring with the city attorney, you could introduce the ordinance with the amendments you have made in terms of numbers and term limits, and I will bring in the duties for the Park and Rec Commission and make all the changes that you had made so that next time you could have a second reading. I would like to, on the resolution for the Community Enhancement Advisory Committee, it sounded like there was consensus that arts and arts programs are not their role, and you will keep yet another committee that may or may not meet?
Yes.
With fewer numbers?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so I will do a resolution for that to bring back.
Just a clarification, so the only thing to act on tonight is the first reading of the ordinance. I think it would be a good idea to allow public comment just before you vote. I mean, I know there'll be a second opportunity in 2 weeks, but.
I think we had public comment.
You did, okay.
Is there anything
And
else?
everybody was invited.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
That's
didn't
what I
see
was, okay. So you may want to let her speak, just.
You are.
Unlike the rest of us.
Hi. I want to speak in favor of term limits because, you know, if you just keep having the same people doing the same thing, you're not going to progress. You're not going to move anywhere. You talk about how staid the committees are and you didn't have quorums. Well, maybe we need some new blood, and maybe term limits are a way of bringing in new blood. Okay? I mean, I hate to say it, but our committees do not reflect the demographics of our city. This came up with the joint meeting last week. And we're not going to get people in as long as we don't have openings, as long as we don't have term limits and turnover. I hate to say this to people who have been working hard and doing a good job. However, we don't have Asians. We don't have young people. We got a bunch of old white people. And the city is, you know, it's got to move forward. Okay? So I'm in favor of term limits for that reason. And I'm in favor of the addition of the Committee on Infrastructure and the Environment and Safety. Think about it. So many of your meetings have been taken up with public here complaining and asking for help on these issues. Why not let a committee work on it, have the public meetings, make the resolutions, give you some solutions instead of just having a bunch of public outcry. Put your citizens to work for you, creating their own solutions, okay? And presenting them to you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Janet. All right, we have a motion and we have a second.
I just want to note that Deborah feels very comfortable that she got down everything, even though it moved very fast. So we will bring back the second document, and you'll obviously have the chance to review it, make sure she got everything, and then if we need to make additional amendments, we'll do that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I read it fairly fine-toothed there. There's some typos, there's some little things. There's a 60-day removal clause for planning. Every other committee and commission is 90 days. Now, that might have been deliberate, given the important function of planning, but that's one thing where it's being treated differently than everybody else when you're reading through the ordinance, I believe. It's clearly 60 days for planning, 90 days for everybody else. 30% of the meetings, it's all in how to remove someone who's been inactive. So if you just check that, and if we want planning to be 60 days and 90 for everybody else, that's cool, but we haven't talked about it.
Thank you for that reminder. That was related to quarterly meetings, so we will change that number based on bi-monthly meetings.
Everything to 60.
Yeah.
Okay, then a lot of the other typos, can I just hand you my notes and you can look at them without me having to type them up?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay, now you can vote. Sorry. If you want. You did vote.
And thank you, Jen. The community comments are always appreciated here. It's just that when we're talking about adding an additional committee at this point in time, we just disagree. So, we can open things up again in the future, but we look forward to all the community comments. And we will advertise here, too, that some committees still have openings. So please do apply. They are very fun, and I encourage everyone to participate. Thank you.
I had asked Deborah, but it didn't get included, is a comparison of all the cities in San Mateo County and the unincorporated areas and what committees and commissions they have. Most of them have some form of traffic safety / environment in some form or another. Some of them have very specific infrastructure. We keep talking about how horrible Millbrae Avenue is, how horrible El Camino is, and yet we have no place to speak on those specific issues. So I encourage the public, so I've lost this one, but I encourage the public to come back and ask for this, because I'm a firm believer that collectively all of you have very specific work experience and academic experience that could help Millbrae solve those problems. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next. Did you want to announce the vote?
Is that a motion?
It's already been voted on.
Okay. The motion is approved unanimously.
Thank you. All right, last on our agenda is staff recommendation to the City Council consider the request of Councilmember Pappen to direct staff to prepare a letter to the City and the County Association of Government of San Mateo County supporting San Mateo Countywide Transportation Plan for 2040, SMCTP, with recognition that Millbrae Station is designated as a key intermodal transit station. Councilmember Pappen.
Thank you. I think that description is a little less than accurate here. The idea of bringing this before the council was this is the San Mateo County Transit Plan for 2040. My suggestion is that we have staff review this plan and accurately represent Millbrae's position on the plan here. This plan is wrong in that at one point it actually says Millbrae may be a high-speed rail stop, when in fact by law Millbrae is a high-speed rail stop. So there are significant issues that need to be addressed on behalf of Millbrae in this plan. I wrote a letter because it was being presented to CCAG. I just wanted to point out a couple of things that I thought were important as far as this plan goes, but this is a plan for 2040, and I think Millbrae needs a strong voice in adding to make this plan better. So I hope my council members will agree, and hopefully we can add all kinds of comments that would make this a really significant plan.
I think we should be very active in this whole plan, and I support support this, Gina? Councilmember Schneider?
I would support this. I will say that I had a meeting with now retired Mr. Martin at the airport, and they were open to taking an exit off of 101 South over Site 7 and connecting into BART, and that would keep that set of vehicles off of the intersection at the freeway and Millbrae Avenue and Rollins Road and Millbrae Avenue. So at least the airport has shown an interest in that, whereas before they were pretty firm, you can't touch Site 7. So if we can look at some of these things that can take some of the pressure off of Millbrae Avenue and El Camino, I'm all for it.
So just for clarification, you're asking for council approval to review the document and discuss with CCAG the city, items of interest to the city.
I would ask that staff review this and council members review this, and please make suggestions as to a letter from the entire city council to CCAG in order to
Okay, so we're not approving the letter that you drafted up previously?
That was my...
Okay.
I would hope that would be a starting point,
Okay.
and that we can make it even better.
So we're not approving anything.
Well, you're approving that you'd have staff look at this, and please, council members, look at this as well.
This is a way of adding something that isn't currently in the goals, so we're adding something to staff from our goals.
Actually, it is in that, we're talking about a station area specific plan, we're talking about transportation, so.
Then it's consistent
right
with our
along the
goals.
lines consistently with the goals.
This plan, I'm on the county CCAG's Environmental Quality and Transportation Subcommittee. I've already commented on this plan, and the importance of this plan is grant money. So how it's written will impact our ability to apply for grants. So that's why it's critical for us to make sure we maximize our opportunity for grants.
Any other comments? Okay, I think.
Well, I would also think that Councilmember Schneider, I mean, more bicycle stuff, whatever your subcommittee that you serve on would like to add to this as well. So I'm asking for a joint effort from everybody here to please
Do you have a
get your
timeline?
thoughts in here.
You're coming up for a vote pretty quick.
I don't know if we could clarify. Yeah, I think it's about a month away, so if we could get this, anybody who has comments, submit them by the next meeting, or before the next meeting, so staff could get a letter together. That would be helpful.
All right, I'm in favor. All the votes. Yeah, it's late.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
So we voted on giving staff direction to take our comments and put a letter together.
And have staff review this as well.
Yes.
They might find things.
And is the expectation that the council will provide your comments to
Correct.
staff in advance of the next meeting so staff can craft that joint letter? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
By 5 o'clock, would that be okay?
All righty, thank you.
Everybody be respectful of that time. Okay, with that being said, we're going to go to council comments, and let me tell you, it's late again.
Can we just go?
10:24.
We go dispense with comments?
No.
Except, okay.
What do you have to say, Councilmember Lee?
Congratulations to our vice mayor and former Commissioner Amy Johnson. So I'm very, very happy about that.
Your engagement.
An engagement. Let's see. Updates. So we had a meeting today with ABAG, their senior staff. There's a discrepancy between ABAG's number and our EIR number. ABAG's got 3,500 new residents, where we have 38 according to EIR, so that needs to be adjusted. And what that means is ability to apply for more money for PDA grants. So I'd like to have that looked at, please. There are also ABAGs looking at trying to create an economic development district for the whole Bay Area, and that would enable each city to easily apply for federal grants that we aren't eligible for because we don't have an economic development district. CMAC, the CCAG's Environmental Quality and Transportation Subcommittee looked at safe routes to school, and right now they're looking at MTC's proposal to include displacement Vote? Oh, you didn't announce the vote. Did you announce the last vote? Oh, okay.
There was no vote for
I thought we did. I didn't look at the sign, so we did vote, didn't we? Yeah, okay, sorry. Go ahead, announce the vote, please.
So that's the motion on the direction to send a letter.
Right.
Prepare a letter.
Right. And the motion is approved unanimously.
Okay, thanks. PCE, the Peninsula Clean Energy, I just want to let everybody know at home that not everybody in Millbrae were given the choice of enrolling as early adopters, but you can, if you want, you can go onto the website, just Google it, Peninsula Clean Energy, and you can go in and be an early adopter if you want to sign up for renewable energy at this moment. And that's it. Thank you.
San Francisco Airport Roundtable is completing their comments to the FAA regarding the change in noise patterns. One of the recommendations, the thing that really affects Millbrae, we pretty much get every type of noise, but we get the one noise that is hardest to remediate. It's the low decibel takeoff sound. And one of their recommendations to help communities outside of our area is to start using runway one left and one right more frequently. That will increase the amount of takeoff noise that we hear in Millbrae, northern Burlingame, and portions of San Bruno. So at least Burlingame, the representative from Burlingame and myself are working on comments that that is not an acceptable alternative to reduce some of the noise. We're going to be encouraging that they use nighttime flight patterns more frequently. And there is an attempt to try to give us at least some break of quiet periodically. So instead of I don't know, maybe a couple of quiet times, we are prohibited from having a curfew the way San Jose Airport has, but noise is going to go up. The airport is running more flights. They are running quieter planes. The good news is United Airlines is joining Lufthansa and Air France in adding changes to their equipment that should make things quieter, but it really won't affect us. We'll still be continuing and getting the same noise. I've attended 4 different bicycle summits and or trainings to learn about safe routes to schools. The school district is also working on safe routes to schools, so we should be seeing quite a bit of work in trying to make our streets safer for pedestrians and cyclists. I did receive also a congratulations to staff from the next award for the Beacon Spotlight Award. So congratulations on that for achieving a greenhouse gas reduction. I'm looking forward to seeing tighter numbers in the general plan, so I'm really looking forward to that part. And finally, I did receive a couple of letters from residents who live near Broadway at the north end between Ludman Lane and Millwood, who are extremely outraged at what they call the decimation of the trees in the median strip along Broadway. They felt they weren't given any warning, that the trees were overly pruned. They were pruned while birds were inhabitating the trees, and it's pretty much their only source of greenery. So I would encourage the city that we have a better tree maintenance program. You've already heard me talk that in my neighborhood, in Lower and Upper Highlands, we have the sycamore trees. They are showing severe signs of drought, and they are city trees, in theory, supposed to be maintained by us, but that means that they're not being maintained. We need to come up with an urban tree maintenance program desperately. So if that's going to be the part of the new Community Enhancement Advisory Committee, I would hope that they move quickly. What I've heard from people is they are insulted that we're Tree City and then we brutalize our trees the way we do. And as someone who grew up in Meadows when there was a tree in front of every house, most of those are gone. So I too find it questionable that we're a Tree City. Thank you.
Councilmember Peppin. Thank you very much. Sorry if I'm taking this away from the Vice Mayor here, but Italian Catholic Federation is having, are you going to do that? No. Okay. Is having their delicious Italian dinner, I guess. It's September 17th at St. Dunstan's School, 5 to 6, $25 a person. Also, Man and Woman of the Year, congratulations to Calvin Chin and Doris Morris as our new inductees, October 21st at Green Hills Country Club. And I would ask that we please close the meeting tonight in honor of Richard Gordon, who is the husband of Deborah Gordon, our council member in Woodside. Thank you. Oh, and Alma. We didn't do Alma yet. Yeah. And Mary Griffin. Okay. Thank you.
I don't have any additional comments, but yeah, once again, loss of a couple of our community members, I believe, since our last meeting. Mary Griffin, former city council member and county supervisor, and Lion and Women of the Year, very active for many decades, very close to me and my family. Alma Masolo as well, another former Woman of the Year, very active with the senior advisory and the ICF for many years. And yeah, so just want to thank them for their decades of service to the community and close in their honor.
Thank you, Ruben. So I'll just mention one thing, October 29th, fun run. All the proceeds will go to the community center. And please sign up, go to the website, signs will be all over the place. And the best news of the day, Ruben, congratulations. Congratulations, Amy, if you're still awake. And we are very, very happy for you. Okay, one last thing. Last word, Gina.
Yes, and everybody, we're still taking all kinds of ideas and recommendations for the recreation center. Please keep those ideas coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Get with the staff to try to figure out what's going on with some of this, because it went way too fast. Thank you.
These were supposed to be handed out to council.
So, what point was that to happen?
Who knows?
You're watching MCTV, Millbrae Community Television, Comcast Channel 27, AT&T UVerse Channel 99, and streaming live at www.mctv.tv.